Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Movie Mates podcast. I am Matthew, joined by my wonderful co-host and best friend.
Callum.
Hey man, great to see you. So today we're back with a pretty big podcast, I would say, in terms of runtime. This might be our longest one yet, and it's American classics, which I'm really excited to talk to you about, Callum. So excited that I slept in for today's recording. So I felt bad. I felt bad for that, and but yeah, I'm just going to pass over to my good buddy here to explain what movies we're going to be talking about today. So, Callum, off to you, mate.
Yes, so in the current trend of our Movie Mates episodes, we've been barreling through some of the top tier of Hollywood, regarded as the greatest films of all time. So today we'll be ticking off a few more from the bucket list, talking about some
Absolutely.
huge films. I mean, a couple of the ones that I chose for today, I don't actually know that they are regarded as American classics, but I was like, fuck it, I want to talk about Streetcar Named Desire.
Absolutely.
It's definitely regarded as like an American classic play. I don't know about the film. I don't think it ever really garnered the same attention as the play. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, like it got like a few. I think it got a few Oscars. I think the actor who plays Mitch got best. I don't know how he got best supporting actor that
Yeah,
year,
we'll
but
talk about it. But like, Mitch got Best Actor.
absolutely.
Stella got Best Supporting Actress, and very, very justifiably, Vivian Lee got Best Actress.
Yeah. So I suppose in that sense, yeah, I would say there's probably an American classic for sure. Like I would say in terms of like regardless of what medium you watch it in, like a film or a play, like Streetcar would probably be one of the bigger ones in America. So yeah, I think it deserves it, to be fair.
Yeah, and then in a similar vein, To Kill a Mockingbird is, obviously one of the great American novels. But I don't, I know that the film got attention. But do you think it's regarded in the same way as like Casablanca and
Oh,
Gone with the Wind and Citizen Kane?
you know what, man? Like that's a really interesting one. Having watched it, I would say 100% deserves to be there. I think we in our school we that's a GCSE text, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it was in the specification that was in before we did it. So like the specification before, because my sister studied it for GCSE.
Yeah, but that's cool, man. And yeah, I would say it deserves to be in there, but it's like I would say like in terms of like if you probably Google like American classics like before let's say like 1970, I would say you'd probably find a lot of these films in there or all of the films in there certainly. So yeah, I think you made a great choice.
Yeah, I think I pretty much just went like, what's black and white, what's famous,
Mm,
and I would say pretty much all of them, meet the criteria I think of an American classic. But obviously
absolutely.
we're not Americans, we haven't lived a long life, so I mean, it's I guess open to interpretation, but don't give a shit for it, please. I mean, we'll be talking about Gone with the Wind, which Matthew, you have yet to see, and I
Yeah,
think
sorry
uh,
guys.
it's gonna be it's 4 hours long. It's gonna be a slog. It's I have many issues with it. Many
Many
issues with
issues.
it.
Many issues.
And I don't want to see any comments with like bloody PC gone mad. I think all the criticisms of Gone with the Wind are fair, and
Yeah.
we'll talk about how that is perfectly justifiable. Those criticisms when we talk about Gone with the Wind as our final film of the day. So we'll be going in reverse chronological order today. So we'll be starting with To Kill a Mockingbird, a film that was made in 1962, but probably looks closer to 1939 than Gone with the Wind does. Uh, you know,
Yeah.
and obviously, I think that rests for the most part in the fact that it's made in black and white, which the director made as a conscious choice to represent the divide between the white people and the black people in the film, because obviously this film is fueled by racial hatred of the black characters.
Sure.
So I thought usually I'm not a fan of like stylistic black and white. I usually I think it feels quite soulless. When like a TV show does like a noir episode, I just feel like it feels gimmicky, but that's really not how it comes across in this film. Like
Yeah,
it
it's great.
has thematic importance.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, completely, Callum. You've nailed it there. And so that would be so in terms of reverse chronological order. So that's To Kill a Mockingbird, Streetcar,
Yes.
and then Citizen Kane and Casablanca, or Casablanca and Citizen Kane.
Uh, Casablanca, then Citizen Kane.
No worries, man. No
I think
worries.
just give me a second. I wrote the years down.
Yeah, no worries. They're all from the sort of same era, aren't they? Anyway, so like sort of late
Yeah,
30s to
like I think
50s.
Casablanca is like 42, and then yeah, Casablanca's 42, Kane's 31. Sorry, 41.
No worries, man. But yeah, listen, guys. Thank you very much for everyone who supported us recently. Please be sure to like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff, and email us with any podcast suggestions or questions at moviematespodcast@gmail.com. And as always, our for any 50th episode suggestions, please be sure to go to the comment section of this video or the latest, like I think it's like 1 minute and 40 long video entitled "We Need Your Help," because we do need your help. We need some podcast topics to talk about for the 50th. So that would be great, guys. Thank you very much. But yeah, man, do you wanna kick us off with To Kill a Mockingbird then? Yeah.
Yeah, so I'd spoken briefly about the black and white. Accidentally launched in before you had your intro completed, and I apologize.
No,
But we sort of talked about the black and white, and did this sort of thematic importance come across to you?
absolutely, man. I think this film is so special, and the fact that it is really it deals with a lot of like contemporary issues even today, and I think Gregory Peck in this gives one of the performances of just in acting in general. I think he's so fantastic in this, and one thing about this film, I don't know if you'll agree, but it reminds me of American Beauty in the sense that it's a weird, creepy neighbor with like who like is sort of like creepy with the children of the lead, and also it deals with like typical American suburbia life and how it's not everything is what it seems. So I don't know, I just sort of got those vibes from it, and for that, I really love it.
Yeah, yeah. I didn't pick up on the parallels. I'll be honest. I suppose I wasn't looking for them, but yeah, I definitely see that. And sort of speaking about the kids, I mean, some of the most annoying brats I've ever seen, especially at the beginning. The character of Dill in particular, who isn't actually one of the Finch children, but he is just a special breed of annoying, honestly. Uh,
Yeah.
and I have been one to call my parents by their first names, but when you're six, have some fucking
Have
respect,
some
okay?
respect.
At
Yeah.
six,
Yeah. For at the start of the film, like I was a little confused as to why they weren't calling him dad or something. So I was like, are they related? Or are they just, friends of a friend, or like children of a mutual friend or something? I don't know. But yeah, that was a really weird one. And I actually never realized how kid focused this film is. Scout and Jem have a lot of screen time, to be fair. I would say just as much as Atticus Finch. It's a lot of screen time there.
yeah, I would say bizarrely, I would say more. Like the description of this film is, it describes the rape trial and the importance of Gregory Peck in the role of Atticus. But yeah, I would say that the film is very uh surprisingly divided between the characters. Yeah, it really wasn't what I expected. But going back to what you said about Gregory Peck, sort of the only thing that we've seen him in previously was The Omen, which is sort of like a B horror film. Like it is sort of regarded as a classic. Check out classic horror films in the
Yeah,
horror film
absolutely.
playlist that we
Episode
have
12.
uploaded. Yeah, I saw that you had put Dora in the Lost City of Gold in its own playlist, and I found it
It deserves
hilarious.
it. It deserves it.
It really does. It really does. We need to have a proper good viewing of that once you
Absolutely.
come around to my house.
Absolutely,
But
man.
yeah, we'd only really seen him in The Omen before, which you would expect sort of a phoned in performance, but he's a consistently fantastic actor. He
Absolutely.
commits to every single role that he's in.
Absolutely, man. And I don't know if you'll agree on this one, but I actually found the kid actors in this film, particularly Scout and Jem, to be actually very good for a change. And I actually really bought their performance. Really, I thought they were fantastic. What about you, man? Do you agree with that or not?
Oh yeah, I think the performances are undoubtedly amazing, like across the board. I think every character plays their role. Every actor plays their character exceptionally. It was just the writing of the kids, because I'm usually of the mentality that not like your parents obviously aren't your equal. At least at a certain age, they're not your peer. Like they are an authoritative figure. But I mean,
Yeah.
even an authoritative figure, you can call them by their first name. So normally I would be like, oh well, calling someone by their first name doesn't mean you don't respect them. But I
Yeah.
mean, when you're fucking six, call them dad or call them sir. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
calling him
Yeah.
Atticus just seems like a slap in the face.
It does. It does. One thing about Atticus, I actually love how he's just a nice guy. Like you know, he actually is a really gentle, down to earth figure, and you know, they don't really give much backstory as to his wife or anything like that. We know he's a widow, but you know, he's generally like a nice guy, and I really empathize. Not empathize, that's the wrong word, but I really sort of felt his character throughout the film. Like I really had sort of, you know, I'm trying to think of the word. Yeah, I really sympathize with him throughout the film.
Yeah, definitely. And I'd heard that this character was, sort of a very benevolent person, and everybody, like, he's a hugely respected character within literature. But I was sort of concerned about how it would come across, sort of in today's climate, watching it, seeing sort of, a white man defend a black man. I thought it might come across as, like white
White
saviorism,
savior, yeah.
like, yeah, like, like a black man needing protection. But that's not how it comes across. It just comes across as like one good man helping another good man. And
Yeah,
because Atticus is so like he's anti-racist to the point that that wouldn't have even been a consideration of his. He doesn't see himself as a white man helping a black man. He just sees them both as good people and peers, which is the
absolutely.
right attitude to have, obviously.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely, and you know, the I think in a different sense to how you view Gone with the Wind. You know, I think this film condemns racism completely, and I think it's very ahead of its time as well. Just in terms of the filmmaking and also the themes it presents. So I don't know if you agree with that, man. What do you think?
Can you not hear any static right
I
now?
I can't hear anything, buddy. Well, it's all good on my end.
I think it's just when I move, maybe. But yeah, like, could you repeat the last
Yeah,
part?
no worries. So like I was just saying, you know, I think this film does like condemn racism, and in terms of the filmmaking and the themes it presents, you know, I think it's very ahead of its time in that. And it's such a powerful film. I think is the one word I'd describe it. Like it's quite underrated, I would say, despite being an American classic.
Yeah, I definitely agree. It is unfortunate that that's ahead of its time. The fact that
Yeah,
just the idea that you should treat all people with the same equal level of respect. It's unfortunate that that was
yeah, I know, man.
a perspective that was ahead of its time. But obviously, even the book written by Harper Lee was written, like a couple of decades before the film was made. But yeah, the film is incredibly powerful, and I would say the most incredibly powerful scene in the film is the court scene, especially
Absolutely,
where Tom Robinson is giving his testimony.
I agree
Because I was
completely,
I
man.
was I was I think it's all in the actor, because I was hanging on his every single word.
Yeah,
Like obviously, there's the fact that this is a rape trial, so you have to sort of balance the consideration that you should believe the woman, but then you also have to listen to evidence. So you had to, I was hanging on his every word, waiting to see the sort of consensus of the jury. But obviously, we knew going in from like the perspective of Atticus that the character of Tom Robinson was innocent anyway.
yeah.
So whilst we were already confident in his innocence, it was just it's a heartbreaking scene, especially because he's found guilty.
Callum, you've nailed it there, buddy. And I think what makes it even more heartbreaking is sort of before even the trial begins, you know he's probably going to be found guilty just because of the racial stereotypes at the time presented in the film. And you know what one that the length of the courtroom scene alone makes you appreciate, you know, how arduous it must be for real life lawyers. You know, that's just a snippet that we've shown, but you know, that a trial would go on for, you know, ages. And you know, Brock Peters as Tom Robinson, I think he gives the performance of the film just in the little bit that he's in. And I know that's crazy to say because Gregory Peck is in this, but his teary-eyed description of events is just is marvelously done. You know, he's such a talented man. And you know what one scene I particularly found really compelling was, you know, when all the black citizens of the town stand up in support of Atticus. I thought that was such a powerful visual as well.
Yeah. And yeah, I agree with you. I went in with the full expectation that he was going to be found guilty, because I knew what to expect of the obviously racist attitudes of the townspeople. But I was still optimistic that that justice would prevail, and that this was going to be a happy ending where you know things you know things at least improve. I mean, obviously he would have never got over the trauma of having this accusation, and the townspeople would view him a certain way, for the rest of his life. Even if he had
Yeah,
gotten off this rape trial, it would have been it would have completely marred his reputation.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I was still optimistic that things were going to improve, and then that was just completely shattered to pieces when they revealed that he's been killed.
I know. I had the same thing, man. His off-screen death, the fact that it's off-screen is heartbreaking enough, but it's such a real film in the sense that this has probably happened many a time, and it's sad that that's the case, man. And I think this film is, like we said, so ahead of its time. But I mean that in itself is ridiculous to say, isn't it? I suppose that it shouldn't have to be ahead of its time, but you know, I have a weird sense of like future nostalgia for this one, man. It's a really, in a similar sense to how I felt about Back to the Future. Like I feel nostalgia already watching it, even though this is for the first time I watched it. So I think this film has unbelievable rewatchability to it, and I'm a huge fan of it.
Yeah, yeah, I fully agree. And in the film, we sort of see the complete corruption of the justice system for the most part. In the uh, well, I mean, the jury, comes to a consensus on the fact that he's guilty, and I assume it was a unanimous consensus after 2 hours on a rape trial,
Yeah,
where a normal trial would last weeks or months, and then they would be convicted and then a retrial. Whereas this trial is like started and finished in a matter of hours.
yeah,
That's just corruption at its
yeah. It's
finest.
ridiculous.
And
Yeah,
then we sort of see later that the sheriff lies about the cause of death of Mr. Yule. So I mean, it's very possible, and they don't even really allude to it in the film that like Tom Robinson was just killed. They sort of say that he tried to run away and then was shot in an attempt to wound him. But I mean, it's very possible that the system was just so corrupt that
they
they
just
just
killed him
murdered
anyway.
him.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
what I
and
was
that's
thinking. It
not
was
even really
leading to.
alluded to.
Yeah, it seems out of character for him to like run away, and even though he's innocent, I definitely think it probably alluded to the fact that he was murdered behind closed doors.
Yeah, which is confusing because it seems that the police sheriff is a good guy because he defends the Finch children, and he covers up the fact that Mr. Yule was stabbed by Boo because he knows that Mr. Yule's a horrible racist and that he lied at the rape trial. So he knows that he received his comeuppance in his death, so he's willing to cover that up and say that he fell on his knife. Like, come on,
Yeah,
I mean,
no.
just say that he was like stabbed and make it like I know saying that he fell on his knife is kind of just like a neat little bow on it. It's tidier than just making a murder trial and just saying, oh well, I guess we'll never solve it. But
Yeah,
yeah, I mean, so that shows that there is a moral ambiguity, but the sheriff probably is a good guy because he's at least defending the innocent and sort of morally prosecuting the guilty, and allowing Mr. Yule to sort of die without bringing his killer to justice.
yeah.
So I don't know whether the sheriff would have been responsible for the death of Tom Robinson, but I feel like maybe people in the police force may have turned a blind eye to maybe the townspeople killing Tom Robinson.
Yeah, man, I think that's a fantastic point, Callum. And it's like we said, this sort of shit does happen in real life, unfortunately. And the fact that the movie is so grounded in reality and so real, I think adds to the quality of it, to be honest, man. And it is sort of sad to think that the Tom Robinson character was such a compelling character for all that he was in the film, and it's sort of sad that he doesn't get his happy ending, and it's a bit gutted. You feel gutted after watching it. Like you feel a bit down after watching it because you think this has happened many a time in real life, and it's a sad one, man. To be honest with you, it's not. The film certainly doesn't have a happy ending.
No, I would say that the first third of the film or so is quite dull, and then the I would say definitely the second act of the film is sort of the most emotional. It makes you feel like raw and depressed, and like there's no justice in the world. And then the third act is good, but it's kind of like a bizarre out of nowhere.
Yeah,
They say
it
that
feels like
Tom
a different
Robinson has
film.
died. Yeah, and then they're like, oh, the kids are gonna head to a pageant. Oh no, an attacker!
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
it like it doesn't gel, but it's not bad.
Yeah, I agree with you completely, Callum, and I think if the film overall is fantastic, but the final sort of 20 minutes ish, it doesn't work for me in terms of just it doesn't fit in with the rest of the movie. It feels like a totally different film, but with the same characters. It feels rushed in a way. But that being said, it's not bad necessarily. It's just it just feels disconnected really for me.
Yeah, I mean, I think there would probably be more satisfying ends to the film that had a bit more sense of like like posthumous justice for Tom Robinson. I
Yeah,
feel like there could have been a legal situation that would have maybe provided a bit more justice for him even in death. So
absolutely.
yeah, it wasn't really the ending I wanted, but I didn't dislike it.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree, man. I agree completely. Yeah, I actually strangely don't have any more points really on this film, to be honest, man. And like it's not that nothing happens in it for me. It's just there's like often in the podcast, I would like quote lines that I thought were silly or just criticize things. But to be honest, I don't have massive criticism for this film, so that's probably why I don't have that many notes really for it. Anything from you, buddy?
Yeah, I think that it's just so expertly done, especially in the acting and the writing,
Absolutely.
and, the cinematography and everything. I think our longest reviews are usually where we can take the piss out of stuff,
Yeah,
and there's just
yeah,
nothing to make fun of in this film because it is so powerful. And there are parts of it that are dull, and I would say a lot of the runtime is made up of sort of quite long monologues. But I mean, those are the best parts of this film, the monologues, especially
absolutely.
as we said, the testimony of Tom Robinson. So yeah, there isn't much to say about this film other than it's great.
Absolutely, buddy. So if you've not got any more points, buddy, I'd love to hear your reading, Callum.
Yeah, so as I said, well, I mean, pretty much every criticism that we can give to this film, it's just due to it being based on source material. So I mean, we're not really judging the film as such, more just how it's been adapted from the book. But I feel like it's a relatively long runtime, and I think that the first act maybe drags a little bit, but well, once you move away from that, and maybe this slightly disjointed third act, everything in this is absolutely stellar. I was sort of taken aback to the fact that even like when you look past the fact that it's done in black and white, it still looks like it's made in like the 1940s.
Yeah,
It doesn't
yeah,
look like a film made in the 60s. When you compare it to like The Graduate, which was made 6 years later, they just seem worlds apart.
absolutely. Yeah,
So it was sort of going. It felt like going back to a very long time ago, even though it was made like 60, just under 60 years ago. Uh, I mean, obviously that's a long time for us,
yeah,
seeing as we did not exist yet. But
yeah.
it feels like it was made a long, long, long time
It
ago.
does. It does. Yeah.
But yeah, aside from the third act, sorry, aside from the first act, I love everything about the film. So I would give it an 8.5 out of 10.
Lovely, mate. Lovely. And yeah, man, I thought you made some fantastic points as always, buddy. And for me, I think this film is so complex in the themes that it deals with. And as I said, the characters of Atticus Finch and Tom Robinson are two of my favorite characters out of the five films that we're talking about today. So credit to Gregory Peck and Brock Peters for that incredible stuff. For me, I think the third act, the last 20 minutes does feel like disconnected from the film. But regardless, I think this film is pretty much a masterpiece. I I give it a 10 out of 10. I think I loved it. Had a great time with it.
That's absolutely fair, because I mean, my issue was only with pacing, I guess, which is a minor criticism. I'm gonna retroactively give it a 9 because I feel like I was a dick. Because I
Love
mean,
it.
because I mean, I do have like minor issues with it here and there, but I mean, it is an American classic. Watching it, initially I thought perhaps it's not, but watching it, it was history in the making, and
Absolutely.
I'm sure watching that film, like I'm sure that turned some people around and had them question their own sense of morality and hopefully you know move on and try to improve themselves and educate themselves and make themselves a better person.
Absolutely,
I feel
Cal.
like that film, so like this film has that message that that would encourage you to like look inwards and try to make yourself a better person, so that you treat people equally and people have justice.
Definitely.
And everyone's treated equally.
For
So
sure.
I have to applaud the film for that, because I certainly feel that message from it.
Absolutely, buddy. Absolutely. I thought that was fantastic stuff. And I've just realized, see in the corner of the camera, I can actually see, is that Ryan Mark's face in a mug?
Oh shit, can you see that?
Yeah, I just see Ryan Mark appearing.
Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah, isn't like didn't Chris get you one of these as
He did,
well?
yeah. Shout out Chris
Yeah,
if he's
it is
listening.
beautiful.
Okay, so I suppose we should now move on to our second film then, buddy. Yes, A Streetcar Named Desire.
Yes,
So
a
iconic.
film and a play that has a special place in our heart. Sorry, not hearts. We don't share one. But
Oh,
we studied this film. Sorry, we studied this play extensively in year 13 when we were 17. And we
many
know
moons
pretty much
ago.
everything there is to know about this film and this play,
Too much?
which I think will probably, our knowledge of the play probably hindered our enjoy. Well, it probably enhanced our enjoyment of the film, but it will probably make us more critical, because I feel like this film, uh, it makes quite a few changes, and it has a lot of letdowns. Where it changes things from the play for its detriment.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And you know what, buddy? This is sort of a similar. I think we sort of. Well, I certainly view this film in a similar sense to how I view Spider-Man 3, in the sense that we both have a mutual admiration for this film, and it's kind of like a inside joke for us, because there's a lot to applaud of this film, but there's also a lot to laugh about. And to me, it feels so weird to watch a movie when you're aware of the source material and the screenplay. So you're more, for me, I was more aware of the actors are actually acting, and you can quote the lines before they're said. So that kind of ruined the believability of the screenplay for me, in terms of, yeah, you realize that, yeah, that's Vivian Leigh, that's Marlon Brando, that, yeah, whoever, it kind of ruins it for me. But that's probably just the fact that we've analyzed it so much. What about you, buddy?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we obviously hadn't read, To Kill a Mockingbird, so we felt no need to like scrutinize its quality, like the film's quality in comparison to the book. But yeah, obviously, because we scrutinize the play itself and then watch the movie, we're obviously going to scrutinize the film even harder,
Yeah.
because it makes some, I'll be honest, baffling changes to the source material.
Yeah.
There are a few that are made for the positive, but there's two, I would say, that are, pretty detrimental to the film.
Mhm.
But one positive change that I will have to give it is that initially the play relies on Aristotle's three unities, of like time, place, and action,
Yeah.
where pretty much the entire play does take place in just the Kowalski household. Uh,
Excuse me.
and that sort of creates this like sense of claustrophobia, where
Absolutely.
they feel like they've entered this place, and they, to quote Hotel California, check in, but you can never leave.
Yeah.
It does build uh this sense of claustrophobia, but this film adds multiple new locations, like the train station, and like
Yeah.
the pier and the factory, and it sort of takes away from the sense of claustrophobia, but I think it actually builds the universe in a way that
Absolutely.
I think is an improvement.
Absolutely, man. I think you've nailed it there. And this film is proper old school, isn't it? I mean, a film with Marlon Brando and Vivian Leigh. I think Vivian Leigh gives one of the best performances of all time here. I think she's fantastic. And I think one thing about this film, that there's such an incredible mix of there's such an incredible sound mixing and set design. With the sound of the train. However, like when I watched it, there are brief moments of complete silence when no one's speaking or there's no background music, so it's just like complete dead. I don't know if you got that in your view.
No, I hadn't picked up on that, but yeah, I hadn't stopped to think about that. But definitely mentioning Vivian Leigh, I would say that she is by far the biggest standout of this film. I would say she is like one of the only things that is perfect in this film.
Absolutely.
Uh, and I sort of think that she probably got this role off the back of being Scarlett O'Hara uh, in Gone with the Wind, because I know you haven't seen it yet, but she sort of plays a very similar character, having owned a plantation and being this sort of Southern belle, who, deals with certain, similar issues, and that there's cases of sexual assault within Gone with the Wind that I think do greatly parallel this character. So I think
Yeah.
she is pretty much the only good part of Gone with the Wind, even though she's playing a horrifically detestable character.
Yeah.
In my opinion, she gives an outstanding performance, and I have to assume that that's why she was hired for this. Well, she was also she and Marlon Brando were both in the play, and then they were hired for the film because they were sort of like seen as the definitive Stanley and Blanche. So it's very apparent as to why she was cast in this role to me.
Absolutely, buddy. And one one actor that wasn't in the play was Kim Hunter as Stella. And I think here she's incredibly underrated. I think she's fantastic, right up there with Vivian Leigh in my opinion. And I think the what makes the characters of Stella and Blanche so great are that they're so vulnerable, but also like they're very empowering, but also like they know that as Stanley says, like he's a king, he's the king around here. He's sort of the big boss, the big bad of the film. And Marlon Brando, as much as we criticize his accent off the podcast, and it is terrible, he is pretty good in this film, I have to say. Like his violent fits of rage are quite horrifying, actually. He gets really angry. He smashes things and stuff, and he beats Stella, and obviously rapes Blanche. It's horrible to watch. But he's actually he's very fantastic. You can see why such a famous actor and such a great actor from like The Godfather and Superman and stuff like that. He's fantastic.
Yeah, I mean exactly. I hate him in this film, but it's because he is the villain. I think that's him giving a fantastic performance, and that's why I hate the character so much. Like, do you hate? I mean, because he is in sort of he is in a way kind of charming. Marlon Brando himself, not the character of Stanley.
Mm-hmm.
So do you think sort of hiring this kind of like charming, handsome man, like do you think that sort of changed the character from how you like perceived him when you read the play?
To be honest, man, I'll be completely honest with you. I think for me, when you sort of read a book or you read a play and you sort of visualize the characters in your head, for me, I think Vivian Leigh is how exactly I'd imagine Blanche. Strangely enough, Kim Hunter is not how I imagine Stella at all. But Marlon Brando is completely how I imagine Stanley, to be honest. I think he fits the role perfectly. What about yourself, man?
Yeah, I suppose in a manner, he has to be sort of this charming figure because then you kind of wonder why Stella would have stayed with him, so especially because he treats her so horribly, and she obviously realizes by the end of the film that she needs to leave him, for the betterment of her mental health.
Yeah.
So I guess there would have needed to have been some initial attraction or reason for them to have gotten together. So I suppose Marlon Brando is sort of the image of Stanley that I would have pictured. Yeah.
Absolutely, man. And one thing about Marlon Brando in this film, like I haven't seen, obviously, I've seen limited amounts of films from this sort of era, but this sort of seems to me like the first introduction of like the sort of the really muscular, the ripped sort of male figure present in the film that we've seen with Hugh Jackman in roles, and Chris Evans and Chris Hemsworth in certain roles. So I think for me, I think this is the first sort of introduction to that sort of figure until like maybe an Arnold Schwarzenegger type figure or a Sylvester Stallone in Rambo and stuff like that, and Rocky. So what are your thoughts on that, buddy?
Yeah, I sort of agree. I mean, it's always odd, when they sort of. I mean, even films of today, they're sort of like, oh, we need this action hero, this action star, or this romantic lead to be, absolutely shredded. But they don't usually concern themselves with the villain. The villain's usually, just like off in the corner being maniacal. It doesn't matter what they look like with their kid off. But this is sort of the first instance of where they also wanted an attractive sort of an attractive, charming villain of the film, which I think sort of it's a huge departure from like films, from the portrayal of villainous characters in films before and films after. It is just hugely different because you're meant to find this guy like charming to a certain degree and attractive certainly, and that's sort of how he lures victims in. But I mean, what one thing that I could sort of criticize this film for is that I would say more apparent in this film than it is in the play is that Blanche is actually attracted to Stanley. She actually seems to find him handsome and charming, and it sort of opens up similar problematic concepts that are sort of spoken about. I sort of go in depth with it in Gone with the Wind. So if you want to hear more about sort of the perception of of unconsensual sex, we'll be talking about that extensively in Gone with the Wind.
Sure.
And I feel like there are some shades of that here, where the audience would excuse Stanley's behavior and go, oh well, it's because like she found him attractive, so they had sex. Like she like I feel like this film doesn't go hard enough to criticize that
Yeah, that's a fantastic
mentality
point,
of the
Callum.
audience.
Yeah, and sort of we sort of mentioned that in English class once. At the time, the audience clapped Stanley off stage when he carries away Blanche to rape her, and that's horrifying to think about. That's that's the most brutal thing really a person can go through. Especially a vulnerable woman like Blanche presented here, and I think the Stanley Blanche dynamic is so good, so good, and in the play, for me in the play, it's sort of different to what you think. I sort of thought it was an even level of attraction sort of between them because it's I wouldn't say for me it's more of like a lustful attraction, like they just want to like I think I know this is going to sound very blunt, but it's I think for me it's just a matter of they want to fuck one another, to be honest with you, and
Mm.
like and obviously like by the end of it, Blanche is the one who rescinds that, and she sort of she sort of steps away from her lustful attitudes, and whereas Stanley doesn't, he forces himself on her, which is horrifying. And I think I think the film is really complex. The Blanche character is so complex, and we've studied her a lot off the podcast as well, so it's a really interesting one. And I think that the two performances and the chemistry, strangely, that these two opposing figures have together is remarkable.
Yeah, yeah. I had sort of read, the play is sort of she is disgusted by him, and he is attracted to her because he can't have her because he's obviously married to her sister.
Yeah.
And then
Good point.
she is known for having had sex with a lot of people, and that's sort of her reputation that that Stanley uses to bring her down with Mitch. And sort of uses her past as her downfall. Especially with her relationship with Mitch.
Yeah.
So, and then obviously, she wants to reject her past, and I just always read it as she's disgusted by Stanley, and it's pretty one sided. But even he isn't really attracted to her. It's because
He can't
he
have her
can't
sort of.
have her.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's a great point, Calvin. It's a great point, and I definitely agree with you on that one. I think it's definitely it's a really interesting one, man. And the character of Mitch is sort of like he's thrown in there, and it complicates things as well. Not in a bad way. I think Mitch is a fantastic character in this. And what one thing about the Mitch and Blanche dynamic is just as fabulous as the one with Stanley. And it itself takes a very dark turn as well. And it's just a really complex film. And you sort of at the start you think, oh, I think I really want the Blanche and Mitch romance to work out because they really seem perfect for each other. But then when you realize they do have very different attitudes. Blanche herself, she states she just wants a bit of magic in her life, and potentially that's why she has that initial potential attraction towards Stanley, because she just wants to spice things up, so to speak. But it's interesting, my man. Do you agree? You okay? Can you hear me? Okay, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It just fully froze for a solid minute.
No worries, man. Did you hear what I said? Okay, or do you want me to repeat?
I did not hear what you said. I know you were talking about Mitch.
Yeah. So one thing I said about the Mitch character is like, you sort of at the start you sort of want the Mitch and Blanche dynamic to work out because you sort of think they're perfect for each other. But then, but they have very opposing views in the sense that Blanche says she wants just a bit of magic back in her life, and you can definitely identify with that, and you can sort of sympathize with her for sure. And that's maybe why she has sort of like a lustful attraction to Stanley in the film, is because she just wants to spice things up, so to speak. She wants, in a similar way to Stanley, like she wants something she can't have. Stanley wants something that he can't have. And by the end, that sort of dynamic is brutally crushed, rightly so. And it's such a complex film. I think the Mitch Blanche dynamic is so good, and you get FVC. Well, I think I've criticized Mitch winning Best Supporting Actor, Carl Malden, but he is pretty good in the film, to be fair. Like I don't know if he's Best Supporting Actor worthy, but he's very good. Gotta have it to him.
Yeah, I mean, I'd always, viewed him as sort of like the sensitive, sweet character of the film. and of the play. But actually, when you watch it, just everyone is terrible in their own way. Sort of Stanley is obviously disgusting on pretty much every level, and
Yeah.
uh, Blanche is sort of like a xenophobic, pathological liar, and there's pretty much a manner to criticize everyone, and sort of in my mind I was like, Mitch is the exception to the rule, but I mean he does come across as like aggressively sexist and also accepting of domestic abuse. He's very blasé. When he says,
Absolutely. Yeah.
like his pretty much his only concern about the domestic violence is that Blanche saw it, so early on in her stay in
Yeah.
New Orleans. She's like, he says, oh, I wish he hadn't seen that, so early on, basically. So he's pretty much fully excusing the domestic violence, instead of criticizing it.
Yeah, and the Mitch character does do a complete 180 in my opinion. Like you said, perfectly, Callum. You think he's a very sweet, innocent sort of guy who, his mother's unwell, so he's sort of vulnerable in the similar sense to how Blanche is vulnerable. But then again, like, yeah, they do have very different attitudes, and obviously, like, it doesn't work out by the end. So, it's a really complex one again. That's exactly a credit to the screenplay by Tennessee Williams, and obviously the movie as well. It's so complex and it's so good, and there are some really great lines in there as well. There's some funny ones as well, particularly by Mitch as well. But no, I think he was great in this.
Yeah. I mean, I've never heard a person like will be so proud to announce their weight as he is. He seems,
Yeah,
I mean, thoroughly impressed by himself. I mean, good on him. I guess he has a positive self-image.
yeah.
So good on him.
My
But I
belly
would
is
say,
hard.
oh yeah, his rock hard.
Rock
Of
hard.
of course. I mean, he says that he's been lifting weights and swimming. I don't know where he's getting abs, but okay.
Yeah.
Sure. I mean, sure.
One thing I
Uh,
didn't pick up on this film about Mitch is when Stanley like screams at him, like he goes like Mitch, and then the camera like zooms in on Carl Mullen's face, and the Mitch goes, "I'm coming." Did he pick up on that? 'Cause I thought that was absolutely hilarious.
I didn't, because I think at the time I was paying attention to the fact that people, he sort of like walks over to go to the bathroom and people are joking about the fact that he's like peeping through the curtains. He's like, oh, I wouldn't do that, and then it just like zooms in and I'm like fully staring through it for like 2 solid
Yeah,
minutes, and
yeah,
he just comes across as kind of creepy. But one big criticism that we could give of the film is the fact that it's incredibly censored, because sort of like the very strict sort of certification boards at the time wanted a lot of the details and a lot of references from the play stripped away, and we sort of see I would say the biggest narrative victim of the censorship is probably, well, the ending, which we will get to, which is incredibly different, but also sort of the portrayal of Blanche's relationship with her deceased husband,
yeah,
because in the play it's obviously very clear that he was gay, and he had a lover, and she found them in bed together, and she said on the dance floor of that night at the casino that she was that she despised him, and that's what led to his suicide, and a lot of that's just sort of implicit or referenced here, and I think sort of not going explicitly detailed with it sort of robs her of her tragic backstory, and like it sort of
yeah.
robs her of like the context of a lot of her actions in the play
That's such
and
a great
and the
point,
film.
Callum. I think you've nailed it there, buddy. And yeah, like it definitely does rubber of that aspect. It's sort of like all those things are things that like help mold her as a character, for better or for worse. And yeah, like as we said, I've said it a million times, like it's such a complex film and the characters are so complex. And what one thing I wanted to ask you, with in relation to like the Stanley Blanche dynamic is, we see that Stanley offers Blanche a drink to settle old scores, to settle old rivalries, and I wanted to know, like, do you think he was genuinely serious when he offers Blanche a drink? Because we sort of see that he's sort of happy that his wife's about to give birth to his first kid, and then Blanche gives this facade that she's happy that she's got a cruise with I think it's Shep Huntley or whatever, but that ends up to be a lie. So what do you think? Do you think he was serious with that? Because it's a difficult one to call, because that just immediately prefaces like like horrifying rape scene. So what do you think, man?
Yeah, I think that his I think he probably leapt into that situation with the full intention of always concluding it with sexually assaulting her.
Yeah.
You know, I don't think that was sort of, you know, the like, you know, I don't think that interaction was what, you know, made him decide to do that. You know, I think that was fully in his head, and it was her unwillingness that, you know, that made him see that, you know, it was a chance for him to
Yeah.
gain like power over her. So yeah, I think he's just a horrible dude, and I don't think that was like a genuine gesture.
I agree, man. Yeah, completely agree with you, Callum.
But sort of, you know, to just quickly circle back to, you know, like the the situation with Blanche and her deceased husband. Do you remember what her husband was called?
Alan, is it? Alan West?
Alan, yes. You know, in the play, you know, it makes it overtly clear that, you know, she caught him, you know, having sex with someone else, and you know that's sort of why she says I despise you. So you know, so in the play, I sort of read it more as, you know, she's you know, she's she despises him because of the adultery rather than the fact that it was with a man, you
Mm-hmm.
know. But then in this film, they don't make mention of the fact that he was having sex with someone else. They sort of just allude to the fact that he was gay. So it makes her come across as homophobic
Yeah.
rather than hurt by the adultery.
Yeah.
So I think it's detrimental to the portrayal of the character of Blanche,
Mm.
and it makes her seem like a worse person.
That's really yeah, man. That's so interesting you mentioned that. Yeah, I never picked up on that. It does sort of make you. It certainly lessens the sympathy you can have for her, I would say. Like, you know, obviously, you know, she's a rape victim. You've got to have sympathy for her. No one deserves to go through that torment. But no, you're right, man. That's such an interesting one. I didn't pick up on that. That's fascinating. And yeah, like it's yeah, like you sort of do. It is probably a detriment. You're right.
Yeah. I mean, one thing that, you know, I'm baffled that we haven't mentioned is Marlon Brando and his accent. Because, you know, we are it's a famous joke on the Movie Mates podcast to take the piss out of Marlon Brando's accent. And honestly, watching it back now, it's fine. In my opinion, you know, I always sort of
That's
like
better.
immortalized it in my brain as, you know, this horrific, hilarious accent that was, you know, impossible to understand. And I would say that, you know, certainly for the first 2/3 of the film, it's perfectly tolerable. You know, it is, I guess it's a southern accent, I guess. You know, I can understand most of it, but I think it slowly descends into just like incomprehensible nonsense by the end.
Here's a question for you. What is your favorite line in the film?
Oh, it's difficult to call. I mean, you know, if we're talking serious, I don't know that I can be serious because you know, I find how a lot of the play is written. You know, certainly like the first 2/3 of it. You know, like I find some of the writing quite humorous. But you know, in the film, I would say when you're talking about delivery, it's probably Marlon Brando saying like, "It's just a cat, meow," like, you know, and yeah, and then he does that. I didn't want to do like the scream because I mean, I sort of looked away and I like knew the scene already, so I knew that he was going to do like this sort of like cat scream. But I mean, it was actually, he nailed it.
He did nail it.
Not gonna lie, he nailed it.
He did nail it. That's my joint. That's my joint favorite one. And one line I do quite like, and you can do this line expertly, so you can. It's the woman outside the flat when she goes, Flores, Flores, Parados, Huertos. Give it a go. Give it a go.
Flores, Flores, Flores para los muertos. No, because I was always sad because like, you know, I like to be a bit dramatic. You know, I fancy myself a bit of an acting talent. You know,
Absolutely.
so you know, I was like to get involved whenever we read out a play in class, and I was never called to be the old Mexican woman or whatever, you know, she's described as in the play.
Who
You
were
know,
you? Who were you in the film in the play?
I think I like one time did a couple of lines of Mitch. I know that you were asked to be the big bad Stanley Kowalski. You know, because I mean,
Yeah.
which I mean, you know, I totally understand. You know, when we're talking about you being like, because I mean, he's meant to be like the, you know, the epitome of manliness, and that just is Matthew.
Fuck off. I tell you what, man, I'm being deadly serious with you. Like, I actually think I actually kind of want to get into like acting at uni or something, like join a club. I don't know why. It's kind of something that interests me.
Yeah, I mean, I would like. I mean, we're talking about weird stuff now, but sure. You know, I think that uh, I don't think I would embarrass myself talent-wise. I certainly do not have the memory to remember lines.
Yeah, that's the thing that does concern me as well. Like line, yeah, right. Because there's nothing worse than the fear of not remembering a line for me.
Yeah, I mean, Matthew, you've been the star of many performances, I'm sure. Pirates of the Caribbean, I believe.
Pirates of the Caribbean. Yeah, it was a
Oh no, are
yeah
you serious? That's actually what it was called.
yeah.
Was that an established play, or was that written by your school?
It was established. It was actually, I think it was stolen from like an English school or something, like Pirates of the Caribbean. So yeah, that's if we ever hit 1 million subscribers, I'll release the video of me singing.
Even I haven't seen that. I
Don't
feel like
worry.
after many years of friendship, I deserve to see it.
Absolutely. Have you ever been part of any school plays or anything, or any? I remember a thing. I don't know if this is in the rest of the UK as well. I imagine it is, but like it's customary for like primary schools to do nativities and stuff. So
Yeah.
who were you in the nativity?
Thankfully, we dodged the nativity because I think you need to allow people to express different religious views, and sort of foisting one perception of events on an entire school is
Hmm.
it's not really representative. So they sort of dodged that by making uh they did a situation in P4, which is when we're like 7 or 8 years old. They did it was called like the big giant, or some shit like that, or
Like it?
it was something like that. The big, yeah, it was something like the big giant. And they sort of had like shepherds and stuff, and I think it was kind of a nativity in disguise.
Yeah.
And I was initially given the lead role. I'd learned all
Oh, I
my
remember this
lines,
story. Yeah.
and then a few days before the first performance, I was demoted. I was never given any explanation as to why.
Bastards.
Uh, because I was initially the lead, and then I was demoted to the second or third lead. Uh, but I had to relearn, I had to learn new lines, and it was more lines. So like it was a
Gee.
demotion, but I was given more lines.
Yeah.
So
That's
it
ridiculous.
kind of been the quality of my performance. So I'm kind of baffled by that.
I
And then
think you'd be
In
really good.
P7,
I think you'd be a
in
good actor.
P7, obviously, my voice hadn't broken, so my singing voice and I guess my entire speaking voice was very different.
Hmm.
So whenever we auditioned for Treasure Island, I did not make the cut. I was given
What?
a non-speaking role. Where I was allowed to like appear on stage, but I had to be completely silent. And I think they told me to like mime the singing. Like I don't think they actually wanted me ruining the ensemble.
Oh, like that's sad. That's tragic.
I mean, it was fine, but like I was just more surprised by some of the people that they did choose. Like, do you ever get a situation where you're like, oh yeah, fair, I didn't deserve it, but like, why did these other? I mean, you don't hold like a bitter bone in your body, so it's not possible. But I mean, even like any opportunity in life that you maybe say, all right, my heart wasn't in it, I maybe didn't deserve it, but I definitely deserved it more than this person that got it. Like,
Yeah, I know what you mean.
I
I know
mean,
what you
have you
mean.
ever felt that way?
Uh, there's not an example that comes to mind, but I can certainly see where you're coming from for sure. Like you see, like even like at uni, like I actually think I might like sign up for a few acting. Like I don't know, act like if they have a group for acting there. I don't know. It's something that you watch more and more movies, you think, oh, this is slightly interesting to me. So I
Yeah.
might give it a crack, man. I don't know. What about any clubs at uni for you? Like, like, are you got any in mind, or have you looked up any at the minute, or what do you think? Because it's crazy to think, man. We start in like what is it, 2 months?
2 months. Yeah. I think we start on the 21st of September. So I was maybe hoping to take up a new sport. I know we've both had
Good
a
shout.
had at least a vague interest in archery. That might be
Oh,
something
that'll be
interesting to do,
fun. Yeah.
or something that involves a team, because I've never been part of a sports team. I know you've had a lot of experience in the ways of football and cross country. I've never been on a sports team, and now that I'm so athletic, I finally have the potential to unlock my sporting prowess.
Man, you have such a great
But
like attitude for like competitiveness. So I think you'd fit right in there. Like you're quite a good. That's competitive in a good way. Like that's
just
good.
raw aggression. Like, I mean, have we ever like Oh yeah, I was gonna say, have we played any games where I've been purely aggressive to you? Yes. I mean, not no like no. Well, we've
In a
never really
fun way.
played any sports together, but I mean, anytime Articulate's brought out, a different side of me
I
is
love
there.
that, lad. I love that. But yeah, I suppose, did you wanna move back to a Streetcar Named Desire? That was a good wee chat.
Yeah, I guess if we have to,
Get
move back to the films that we're actually meant to be talking about. But yeah,
So
we've sort of
yeah.
talked about like we've talked about the sensitivity of Mitch, and in his introduction, uh, Stella makes it clear that she actually believes that Stanley is the only one within the plant to actually make something of himself in the
Yeah.
future, and that confuses me greatly because Stanley does not seem very smart. He seems cunning and deceptive, but he doesn't seem intelligent in the way that Mitch does.
Yeah, it's a great point. It's a great point. Like even yeah, I suppose maybe in an attitude sense, he's more focused on his goals and stuff. But yeah, like he doesn't seem the most he doesn't seem the most capable. Like Mitch seems like a very guy who's on the ball, and we don't really see much of the characters like Steve and Eunice and stuff. Like that from my recollection, Eunice was reasonably important in the play. Like, she had a lot more lines in the play than she does in this, which is sad to see. Or so was she? If this is wrong, please let me know. But I could have sworn in the play she was black.
No, there's like it was weirdly written within like we had a copy of the play, and it was sort of we thought that it said the character name and then sort of the description
Oh
beside
yes,
them,
that
but it
was
was
it.
actually
Yes,
just two
yes.
columns of separate
That was it. Yeah, I remember
character
that.
names. But we were I think the reason that we were confused was because one like this film does have shades of racism, obviously, because it's set in it's set in Louisiana, where there was obviously uh, you know there was a lot of cross community relationships,
True.
and friendships, which are visible in this film and in the play. But there was obviously racism present. But like the characters are like Blanche, Blanche, Stanley, Stella, but then you have like black woman and Mexican woman.
Yeah,
They're like
yeah.
anyone who isn't white isn't actually given a character name, which I don't know whether it was a choice of Tennessee Williams, like whether it was his prejudices or it was a choice to sort of give a
Mhm.
critique of the time. We talked about Marlon Brando's performance and how we've probably over exaggerated our hatred for it previously, and especially on this watch, I really liked everything he did. Aside from one scene, which I still remain unconvinced, which is the scene where he, obviously probably the most famous scene in A Streetcar Named Desire, where he, goes outside and yells for Stella from, from the ground to her window, and he just doesn't have any like gravitas or desperation. Like I was completely unconvinced that he actually gave a shit.
Yeah, well, me
I
too.
mean,
Actually, yeah.
whenever I felt robbed when we read this in class, and I didn't get the chance to do my proper like cathartic scream of Stella, and then like I don't know, just the person who did read was just like Stella, Stella, and then Marlon Brando's like Stella, like
Stella.
I don't
Yeah,
know, I just felt really unconvinced and underwhelmed.
I agree, man. I agree, and it's sort of like a very that scene is probably the only scene in the film where I feel like it's rushed. Because Stanley has this violent outburst, like he throws a radio out the window, and all his friends like to be honest, like I know Stanley's a big guy. He's certainly not strong enough to like outmuscle four fully grown men trying to put him in a shower. Like I always
I don't know, man. He's
I always
jacked.
find, yeah, I know. I always find, Callum, if I'm quite angry, I think what thing definitely calms me down is going in an ice cold shower. What about you? You're the
Mm,
same, aren't you?
yeah, yeah, 100%. Whenever I, like throw a radio out a window, or I'm needlessly aggressive to my wife. Yeah, yeah, that's usually the solution I opt for. Uh,
Absolutely.
it's just so weird. Like this play is just bizarre. I mean, we keep
Yeah.
referring to it as a play because I mean, it is quite close in adaptation. I would say, that there's a couple of lines that are cut that sort of, and censorship that was added that sort of removes some ability to judge the characters on their sort of like complete arc of morality,
Mm,
because that's sort of integral to the tragedy of their backstory.
sure.
I would say aside from the ending, it's a pretty much close enough like one-to-one adaptation. So I think it's fair to discuss them, like the play and the film, equally. But yeah, it's just bizarre.
It is, man.
Like
It
the entire thing is just it's probably one of the most unique things I've ever seen. This film is unlike any other film that has existed.
It really is, and I think it's definitely a fantastic film in my opinion. And one thing I wanted to mention to you about Callum is we we go to the cinema a lot together, but one thing we don't do often together is go see like plays and musicals together. I think we had saw Mamma Mia after we had reviewed Mamma Mia 1 and 2 in our musicals episode. Go check that out, guys, episode 13. But one thing we haven't really talked about in the show is the time we went to see Streetcar Named Desire. So
Yeah.
we saw that during or after we had studied it. I think it was during, wasn't it?
It was later. It was before we did the exam, but it was after we'd finished analyzing it.
Yeah, and you know what? I don't go to. I haven't been to a lot of plays, but in my opinion, that was so well done. A Beaver Players. Especially the guy who played Stanley. Like I thought he was incredible.
Yeah, it was I think maybe it was one of the first, actual, professional productions I've ever seen. The only plays I'd ever seen were, ones done by schools. So this was,
Yeah.
the only like next level
Top tier.
production
Yeah.
that I had seen that was of a play. And it was a really great experience. I mean, the only issue with it was, the runtime, because it did feel excruciatingly long. But that's obviously not to the criticism of the performance that they put on. Is spectacular. So
Absolutely.
yeah, I sort of loved that experience. But yeah, when they sort of called intermission and said, yeah, and then after intermission there will be a further 90 minutes, and then our English teacher just said, I'm sorry, like to the entire group.
Yeah, I know. That was one of my favorite experiences actually. I had a great time with that one, and I think there's definitely room in the future for us to see more plays. I'd love to go to the Grand Opera House or something and see a really good one or something. Regardless of what it is. If Hamilton came over to Northern Ireland, I would definitely go.
Yeah, I don't know, just sort of the theater. The theater makes me uncomfortable. Like, one, because you can't leave. Like you sort of just have to stay until it's over. Two, because like you can't really criticize it. Before or after, because it's like a performance that was directed at you. You feel worse about criticizing it. And
Yeah,
three, like they're sort of performing at you, like they're staring at you, and you sort of like feel the need to react to it in a certain way. And you're expect, like there's a certain etiquette involved. So there's sort of just layers of going to the theater that don't appeal to me
fair
usually.
enough, man. Fair enough. Like, I definitely understand that. Like, did you have a good time with Mamma Mia though?
Oh, Mamma Mia was sensational.
So good. What was your
But like,
favorite one in that, by the way? What was your favorite tune?
oh, my favorite tune was probably, and I had probably underrated this song. Like usually, like in the film with Meryl Streep, like money, money, money is like
Banger.
it's the song of the film. It's the big set piece, and with like it's basically a music video just like plunked within a film. Like it makes no sense, but it's great. But I would say "Gimme, Gimme, Gimme" was probably the
Good one.
highlight of Mamma Mia, the musical. What would you say?
I really like SOS. So I did.
Yeah, fair. I
It
mean,
was good.
yeah, I feel like you said you were also a fan of Super Trooper, which I've just never liked. Or
Yeah, I
no, that was
liked it.
Cash.
I'm sorry,
Cash
no,
said
yeah,
that was
I like
his
Waterloo
favorite of
as
the
well.
performance. Yeah, Waterloo is an underrated classic. And you've seen Mamma Mia, Here We Go Again. Like sort of how do you prefer? Like, do you prefer the musical performances in that or the original Mamma Mia?
Oh, I think the original Mamma Mia probably has the more classic scenes, but I think strangely, I actually prefer the music in Here We Go Again, to be honest with you, man. What about yourself?
Well, I mean, I would say like it's sort of a mix because in the second film, this is very off topic, but it's fine.
Yes,
Like
go.
in the second film, half of the songs are sort of forlorn and slow and depressed because Donna has recently died. But sort of when they go to the past with Donna, and they're sort of singing a lot of the classic Mamma Mia hits, classic ABBA hits, and she's in
Mhm.
her youth and in her prime, and it's all joyous and fun.
Like
That is,
Dynamos, yeah.
uh, I think those are the best performances of the franchise.
That's a great point, man. Yeah, like looking back, like I actually forgot we had covered the Mamma Mia films and the musicals episode. Like that was a fun episode back in the day.
Yeah, definitely. Do you want to head back to A Streetcar Named
Yeah,
Desire?
that's it. That's it.
Yeah. So I would say one of the most, we haven't really launched into like metaphors and stuff because I mean, I think when you're talking about a film, it's not really necessary, unless it's
Sure.
integral to the plot. But
Sure.
one that was integral to the plot of the play that I don't feel got enough service here was sort of the motif of light, like light shining truth
Hmm.
on people. The
Yeah.
fact that sort of Blanche talks about the metaphor of being like a moth, instead of a butterfly, that she's sort of drawn to light, and she hides from light to hide her physical. I mean, in her opinion, aged appearance. I mean, Vivian Lee was only 37. She obviously looks great.
Looks great. Yeah.
So I feel like Vivian Lee was maybe too young for the role because she's sort of like, oh, I'm old, I'm hideous, and then she's the same age as Mitch.
Yeah.
It just didn't come across. But the issue with the motif of light in this film, I think, is the fact that it's in black and white, so you don't get the sense of like an interrogative. Is that
It's
a
a good
word?
point. It's a
I
good
don't
point.
know.
That's a
When
good point. Yeah.
like Mitch like points the light at her. I was gonna say in scene nine, but in the equivalent of scene nine, when he sort of interrogates her with the light on her, it just doesn't come across in the black and white of the film.
Man, that's such a great point. Like listening to you talk about this film, man, like it's no wonder you did so well in English, buddy. You have some fantastic points in there, Callum. I mean
Ugh.
that. Like honestly, so good. And I agree with you, man. Like to be fair, one thing I really enjoyed about the film was the film is very explicit about like the paper lantern and stuff. How it's Mitch is the one who puts it up, but he's the one that destroys it. So it's quite clever in that sense. And also like we see the recurring motif of Blanche drinking. One's my limit. We know it's not true and stuff. And it's a really interesting one, man. There's so much. I think we could talk about this movie for days. Like it's such a integral film in film in general, and also it's so deep, so many layers. And to be honest, like one thing I've certainly criticized before. I don't know if I mentioned this in the podcast, but with poetry, I always find like you tend to overanalyze overanalyze poetry. A comma, the, or like whatever. Like it probably doesn't mean anything in the terms of the poet just fancied a comma. But in this film, you could actually say I can actually probably tell that Tennessee Williams did want us to dig this deep into it because like, he's such a clever man and such a deep character, and also the characters themselves so complex and so many layers to them. So what I'd have to say Tennessee Williams did mean all of this play. Whereas with poetry, I question that. What do you think, man?
Yeah, I think that every line in this is crucial, and obviously there's analysis in what the line means, but I don't think there's ever question as to whether it does mean something because I think every line is intended as character building or world building or a metaphor. So I think that yeah, every word is integral, and I feel like analysis into this film and into the play, is never unnecessary really.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. You know what, man? Like, I don't have a lot of notes left for this film, to be honest, man. Any remarks from you?
Yeah, just a few more. So we sort of talked about the horrific nature of Stanley's sexual assault of Blanche. So if we sort of move on to the aftermath of that horrible incident, uh, you know, sort of Blanche has descended into this sort of delusion that she's going to be taken away with this rich entrepreneur Shep Huntley,
Mm-hmm.
and sort of Stella placates her and tells her that that's true, whilst also trying to bring in uh, a doctor and a nurse to institutionalize her.
Yeah.
Was that a sort of side eye? Was there someone in your room?
No, no. I was just looking. I've got To Kill a Mockingbird out of alphabetical order in my DVD collection. I just saw it. I was just like, what am I doing?
Oh,
But sorry.
shameful, shameful.
Go ahead.
But yeah, so they plan to institutionalize Blanche, and I just wanted to talk to you about what help you actually think that she needed, because I think that undoubtedly Blanche does need mental help. Due to the immense trauma that she's experienced, due to the death of Alan and the assault by Stanley. So I think that she undoubtedly needs therapy, but she definitely doesn't need institutionalized because she's not a danger to herself or to anybody else.
It's a great point. Yeah, with a lot of people who are institutionalized into mental health asylums and hospitals, I suppose a lot of that is because they're a danger to themselves or to society. So yeah, Blanche, she definitely seems very vulnerable. And I think she definitely does need mental support. But I would have to agree with you, Callum. I think you've got to feel bad for her in the final scene. She's been through so much in her life, and it's really heartbreaking as well to find out that like she's just left alone now. And the fact that we often like to think where does the film goes after the camera start rolling, yada yada yada. But you do wonder in this film, like, shit, like, where does Blanche go after this? Like, she doesn't get her happy ending. She, like, no one in the film really lives happily ever after, really.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. There are shades of awfulness for everybody, pretty much. But we will talk about, right. I mean, we can talk about it now. The ending of the film and how drastically different it is to the play,
Yeah.
and how that is horrific. In my opinion, because in this version of events, Stella says that she couldn't believe Blanche and go on living with Stanley. So her leaving Stanley illustrates that she does believe Blanche. I'm just seeing
No,
where
go
I'm
for
going
it.
with this.
You're okay.
So she says that she can't live with Stanley and believe that he raped Blanche. So by her leaving, that indicates that she does believe Blanche. But in the play, Stella was so abused and manipulated that she couldn't do anything about her or Blanche's situation. She stayed with Stanley for the sake of the baby, and also because she was sort of abused and manipulated. And then, in turn, Blanche is taken away, and there's nothing Stella can do about it.
Mm-hmm.
But uh, like in the film, Stella frees herself, and yet she doesn't help Blanche, even though she has now realized that Stanley has raped Blanche. So she recognizes the fact that she's just sent her sister away because of her husband, who she escapes from, but
Does
makes
nothing
no
about it.
effort to help Blanche.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It came across badly, in my opinion.
Yeah, it doesn't sit right with me either, buddy. I'd much prefer just the original ending of Stanley and Stella stay together in the original ending, don't they, buddy?
Yeah, she recognizes that she is a victim of Stanley, obviously, especially through his manipulation, because she actually believes that they're in a healthy relationship that she doesn't want to get out of.
Mm-hmm.
And she sort of recognizes that she needs him to help support the baby. But
Yeah.
this is a complete 180 from that. It's the exact opposite of how the play ended, really.
Yeah, like one thing I didn't really pick up in the play when we were analyzing it was like, shit, when you realize that Stella has a baby with Blanche, that sort of, or sorry, with Blanche, with Stanley, you sort of realize that shit, like, that's her stuck with him forever, in the sense that she always is going to have that connection to him, like, regardless of what happens in the future. So she's like permanently tied to him, which is kind of heartbreaking in itself. Like, she can't really escape him in a similar way that, yeah, in the end Blanche does escape Stanley, but she's all like, she's not exactly in a happy place, and she's definitely not, she's definitely not in a good mental state, nor is she in a good state in general. She's just been raped, for goodness sake. So it's a really heartbreaking ending for Blanche. But likewise, Stella, in the play, she's stuck with him, really.
Yeah, and I think they clearly thought that they were like improving the ending of the play by giving Stella freedom and this happy ending. But it sort of failed dramatically.
Yeah.
They clearly tried to improve it, and I think they completely failed, because I think it not only now strains believability, but it also fails to deliver justice for Blanche. So I think it feels on both areas that they were clearly trying to
Yeah.
improve upon.
It's sort of a classic case of, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And in this film, it wasn't broke, but they fixed it anyway. So,
Yeah,
or in their eyes, fixed it. You know what I mean?
yeah, the ending of the play works because it's showing the tragedy of reality, that that things don't work out for everybody. Everyone by the end of the play has I mean Stanley, very horrifically, very sadly, is the most successful. He gets the majority of, like, he is the most victorious by the end of the play. And the play is acting as a critique of society and saying how horrific that is, that people as horrible as that can win. this film sort of lets him win with Blanche, but not with Stella. So it's sort of going like with a half measure, the sort of completely changes the meaning of the ending.
Mhm.
But they only go halfway,
Yeah,
and it's just bizarre.
it
That they
is.
let him have like one victory over Blanche, but he loses with Stella. Whereas I feel like it works to either have him win neither or win both.
Absolutely, buddy. I agree with you completely. And it's a very confusing choice in the film, and I think it actually lessens my opinion of it a little bit.
Oh yeah, definitely. I just give it less credit. I mean, if they know that this was clearly another victim of censorship, because I have to assume that they filmed both endings and then opted for this one because it was the most. Uh, well, I mean, I was gonna say has like the neatest bow, like it's the most what watchable or understandable for the audience, I guess. But it's not really,
Yeah.
because you still watch all of these horrific events unfold for Blanche, and then she, has a tragic ending still. So I don't really see where they thought they were improving it.
Yeah, me neither. But actually, it's one of the curious choices of cinema for sure, man.
Yeah. So I'd love to hear your rating of the film, Matthew.
So I think this film it's definitely up there with one of my favorite films that I've seen so far, out of the five that we're talking about today. And I think it's definitely got the most complex characters, and it's so masterfully written. So for me, I think this is a 10 out of 10 again. I absolutely love this film. What about you, buddy?
Yeah, I would rate the play 10 out of 10 because of how much I loved studying it, and how much I love talking about it, discussing, debating.
Yeah.
But this film, I think, does fall down, especially in the ending and the censorship, because I think that it does fundamentally change some characters, and it makes you criticize more the characters that you're actually meant to sympathize with.
Hmm.
So I think they made some bizarre choices that are a detriment to the film. But largely, I do really like the film, so I will give it a 9 out of 10.
Awesome, buddy. I thought you made some fantastic points. I think that's some of the best stuff you've said ever in the podcast. Like I said, you're always good at that stuff, and I thought you made some fabulous points, buddy. So kudos to you. So did you wanna move on to Casablanca then, buddy?
Yes, sure.
Now I gotta be
So
honest with you. This is
yeah,
probably my favorite film out of the four that I've seen so far.
really,
I love this film, honestly. So good.
that's a big surprise to me because I sort of went in with the expectation that it was going to be sort of like a spy adventure film that I just wasn't going to enjoy, and it's actually less eventful than I expected, but more entertaining. I
Yeah.
expected it to be like, like moving at a fast pace. It's a spy adventure, and I still thought that that would be boring. Whereas it's kind of just like a lot of people just sitting across from each other at a bar having a chat, and it's a lot of
Yeah.
monologues and a lot of dialogues rather than action or adventure. But it still managed to keep my attention throughout.
Yeah, Humphrey Bogart as Rick, I think this is one of the best performances of all time. And one thing I really love about this is how like the camera stalls before showing Rick's face. We can he sort of pans up to his face, and I could definitely imagine him as like a James Bond or something back in the day. I think he would have been fantastic.
Oh yeah, definitely with the sense of dress, the style of sort of
Oh
the
yeah,
white tuxedo jacket. It's
oh
very
yeah,
it's very Skyfall.
oh yeah, big time, man, big time. And something about this film, man, like in a similar sense to how I had said about To Kill a Mockingbird. This is like a future nostalgia for me, and really great rewatchability.
Yeah, definitely. And I did find myself really enjoying the film, but also writing very little because I feel like we do write a lot more notes whenever we're either you know like taking the piss out of something
Yeah.
or we're really critical of something. So I find myself with sort of very close to perfect films like this and To Kill a Mockingbird. I sort of struggle to write a lot. So it probably wasn't until 20 minutes in. I was watching this film with my mom, and she sort of said, "Oh, the music's great, isn't it?" And I was like, "Finally, a note. I can write good music."
Yeah.
I was sort of I felt triumphant in that moment, even though it was like it was quite far in. But I do have to admit, like the music, especially
So
the
good.
the performances by Sam are genuinely incredible.
All awesome, and it's so interesting you mentioned like I watched Streetcar named Desire with my mum, and like like she actually really enjoyed it, you know, and it's nice to watch it. It's always not. I don't usually watch a movie with someone else. It's really nice to watch it with someone, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the certain person that I pick, because I mean there's often a bit of commentary, and I usually like a silent film watch. I would say even with TV, you know, I watch probably 95% of the TV that I watch alone, but there is about 5% which sneaks in, which is reality TV, and I think that's probably the only TV that's open for discussion. You know, because I mean, I get a lot of family members when I watch TV with them asking me a lot of questions about the narrative that's unfolding. I'm like, maybe if you fucking paid attention, you'd know what's going on. Instead
Love
of,
it.
you know, either like
Yeah.
looking at your phone or asking me questions, you know, maybe if you paid attention, you'd understand. But I feel like with reality TV, like that's the one time that you have the chance to sort of like take the piss.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's a great point. And you know what? One thing about this film, I don't know if you got this, or maybe I'm looking too deep into it, but you know, Rick's like shady bar, like or his shady like cafe, as it's called. You know, it kind of reminded me of like Cottonmouth's bar in Luke Cage, sort of the corrupt policeman like allows him to stay and open in exchange for money and stuff. So I don't know if I got those sort of vibes from it.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I would say Rick for the vast majority of the film, and you know, obviously the events before the film seems like a genuine, honest businessman.
Yeah,
You know, it's really only like the gambling, which is, you know, it is standard that, you know, for the most part the house wins. So I
sure.
mean, to have that sort of like rigged lightly is, you know, still it's still honest because people know what they're getting really,
Hmm.
and you know he's only, you know, paying off corrupt police officers because they would you know, but because of you know how oppressive authorities were at the time. So
Sure.
you know he's sort of just paying to survive. So I still think he's an honest businessman, but certainly aesthetically, yeah, I think that's certainly a fair comparison, because I mean both are sort of you know heavily jazz influenced, and you know it's sort of uh, you know like paying homage to, you know, that sort of jazz culture.
Absolutely, man. And you know, you got to feel bad for all the refugees in Casablanca. You know, there's so many different stories that just break your heart, to be honest. And you can sort of imagine like this sort of happening in real life as well. And I gotta be honest with you, I felt a bit silly. I didn't realize Casablanca was like a real place. To be honest, I thought that was just the title of a well-known movie.
Yeah, me too. And then, you know, I sort of read the brief plot synopsis, and I realized that it was an actual location. Yeah, I assumed, because I mean Casablanca, you know, uh I mean, you know, if you take the two words like Casa and Blanca, obviously in Spanish that's like White House. So
Mhm.
I had no idea that that was like I had no idea what the explanation of the title was going to be, but I had no idea it was going to be a location.
It's in Morocco, isn't it?
Um, I mean, that, you know, they mentioned that they're surrounded by desert, so yeah, I believe Morocco.
Yeah, that's cool, man. That's cool. And you know, yeah, like you said, buddy, about the fantastic tunes by the pianist Sam. One of my favorites is "As Time Goes By." It's so good, man, isn't
Mm.
it? So good.
Oh yeah, he has a beautiful singing voice. It sort of reminded me of do you know Nat King Cole, who sings like Unforgettable and Smile from the Joker trailer? He doesn't sing the version that's in the Joker trailer, but he had one of the most he had one of the first versions of it. He's an incredible artist, and sort of the vocals reminded me of him.
That's really interesting, buddy. And you know what? One thing about the character of Sam, he's one of my favorites in the film in the sense that you know it's clear that Rick and Sam have a backstory. You know, I think they used to be friends in Paris or something, isn't it? And
Yeah,
you know, I think he's one of the most compelling characters in the film. You know, and the fact that you know the you know I don't you know he's one of the few black characters in the film. I think it's so empowering that he has such like Rick values him as well, like as he should do, and he's one of the more like respected figures in the film. I would say in terms of you know everyone, he's a very respected musician and pianist and stuff. So you know credit to the actor for the performance as well as the vocals. Fantastic stuff.
yeah, everybody does seem to love him. And do you sort of appreciate like the sort of air of ambiguity with his backstory? Because we sort
I
of
do,
go into the
yeah.
backstory of Ilsa and of Rick, but I feel like Sam needs no explanation. He's just a
suave
cool dude
guy.
who can play sick music. You know, like
Yeah,
he needs no
exactly.
explanation.
Hmm. And on the subject of Ilsa, I think her name's Ingrid Bergman. Sorry, is that her name? Like who plays her?
Yeah, yeah.
She looks exactly like Amy Adams to me. I don't know if you got that. Like I always like to compare actors to modern day actors. She looks a lot like Amy Adams in my opinion.
Yeah, I hadn't considered, but have you seen Night at the Museum 2, where Amy Adams plays Amelia Earhart?
Yeah,
Because I feel like obviously she's dressed in, you know, the kind of outfits of that era. You know, I guess Amelia Earhart was probably the 1910s, 1920s, and then obviously Casablanca's in the 40s. So I think sort of when she gets in that sort of old timey clobber, you know, she kind of does give me that like
yeah.
classic old Hollywood vibe. So yeah, I definitely see that.
What are your opinions in that Night at the Museum films? Because they're some of my favorite childhood films, to be honest with you.
I mean, don't even get me started, Matthew, because I've told you this story many a time, but you know I've seen Night at the Museum 1, Night at the Museum 2. They're both great, and then I desperately wanted to see Night at the Museum Secret of the
Yeah, I
Tomb,
remember this story.
and then my family said, no, Callum, no one wants to see that. What people in our family do want to see is Into the Woods, and I saw Into the Woods, and it's a big old pile of garbage. It's one of the worst films I've ever seen in my life. And I think I talked about this in the Hamilton review, where that was the film that put me off like sung dialogue, because that entire
Yeah.
film is, you know, there's no dialogue. It's all, it's a sung script,
Mhm.
and I don't know, that just made me want to vomit. And you know, anytime that I thought it was going to end, it just went on for another seemingly 4 hours.
Yeah. My sympathies, man. So I've yet to see Night of the Museum 3.
I have yet to see Night at the Museum 3, but I
So
mean, now
good.
that
You'll
you've
love it.
mentioned it, I think it's on Netflix. I'll probably go for it.
Good, man. It's good. I think you'll like it.
Yeah, and you know, we sort of talked about like the tragic backstories, the characters that are in Casablanca, and we've talked about Ilsa, and she enters Casablanca with her husband Victor, uh, and we're told that he's, you know, sort of part of this underground resistance to the war, and you know he's escaped multiple concentration camps. So you would think that he'd maybe be a bit more incognito, you know, within Casablanca, seeming as there are literally Nazis there, and you know
Yeah.
he seems to just address them. You know, anytime an authority comes up and goes, I don't remember what his surname is, but you know they say like, "Are you Victor?"
Laszlo?
And he's just, yeah, yeah, exactly. And you know they sort of, you know, ask for him by name, and then he goes, "Yeah, that's me." Like when he knows that there are Nazis in the area, like he seems to have absolutely zero concern for his life.
It's a great point. It's a great point. And you know, you mentioned there like about like the different backstories and stuff. And one thing I really loved about the film, it's probably one of my favorites in the scene in the film, is when like Rick sacrifices the integrity of his gambling in his business to support the young couple who need money to get visas or something out of Casablanca. I thought that was a really evidence how nice of a guy Rick is. He's just such a down to earth guy, and one of my favorite lines in the film is when um I think it's what's the police warden's name? Is it? I have it here somewhere. Reno, isn't it?
Yeah, is it Frank? His first name?
Yeah, we'll go Frank. I think yeah, Frank Reno, and he says like, "I'm shocked to find there's been gambling going on here." And then someone else goes like, "You're winning, sir," and he's like, "Yep, thanks, bye."
Yeah,
I love
like
that.
there were a couple of moments of like completely unexpected humor, because I thought that, you know, films of the day would be played, you know, pretty much 100% seriously, and
Yeah.
then I was sort of taken aback to actually see moments where I, you know, enjoyed it on a comedic level, and I would say that that's probably my favorite moment in the entire film.
Yeah, absolutely, man. It's not as dark as I thought the film would be. But I think that the comedy works generally.
Yeah, definitely. And we've sort of talked about the fact that, you know, uh, that, you know, bizarrely Victor seems like no concern in the face of the authorities, despite having, you know, been captured and having to have escaped multiple concentration camps.
Sure.
But you know the authorities also treat him in a bizarre manner, because you know they sort of offer him a deal where if he shares, you know, the names of his co-conspirators, you know, they'll give him a visa to go back to the US. But I mean, he also says that, you know, you've captured me in concentration camps with much more persuasive means, and I still haven't given you the names. And they just go, "Oh yeah, we'll let you have a think about it." Obviously, he's not going to take your deal.
Yeah.
Kill him. You know, obviously, I'm not saying they should kill him, because it's, you know, I'm saying, why wouldn't they?
Yeah, I know. He also seems pretty chill that like Rick and Elsa are quite clearly like into each other still.
Yeah, I mean, I will say, he sort of like approaches Rick and says, oh, I know, like I know you and Ilsa have a romantic tension. I felt something. I felt the spark whenever you two were speaking. It's like, acting as though he's like fucking like Inspector Clouseau that's like deduced something. It's like they
Yeah.
made absolutely zero effort to hide their feelings for each other. They sort of went over and started flirting with each other, and they're like, oh, huh, remember our sexy backstory? Like, they pretty much say that in other words. There's pretty much no question that they had a romantic past. And then this bumbling idiot's like, oh, I felt a certain energy between you two.
Yeah, and like Ilsa's like to Rick, I wish I didn't love you so much. And then I just thought, so you married someone else, did you? Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it's like she had married Victor, and then she thought he was killed in the concentration camp, then had her romance with Rick, and then during her romance with Rick she found out he was still alive, so she had to leave to return to him, I guess.
Yeah.
But I mean, I guess she just didn't want to return and then divorce like this sort of prisoner of war,
Good
because
point.
I guess that she wants to uphold the reputation, or I mean, it's possible to love two people at the same time.
It is.
So I mean, but I mean, do you think she was actually in love with Victor, or do you
I
think
never
she
got
at
that in the
least?
film.
No, I never got the impression that she loved Victor. I mean, I suppose the question is just whether maybe she just loved Rick more. But I also felt like sort of no energy or spark or emotion or love between Ilsa and Victor, honestly.
Yeah, Victor's probably the most bland character in the film, which is strange because I think the film wants you to really like him, wants you to think he's a suave guy, but he's a bit of a nothing character in my opinion. And I've got a bit of a hot take here. Humphrey Bogart as Rick, he kind of reminds me of, as the Weekly Planet would say, Australia's own, or rather Northern Ireland's own Jimmy Nesbitt.
Fantastic. Yeah, I definitely get that. I mean, obviously he's a better actor.
Are
Uh,
you a Jimmy Nesbitt
I mean,
fan? No.
no, I'm not. I'm saying clearly Humphrey Bogart is the superior actor. But yeah, visually, I definitely get that.
Yeah. Well, I quite like Jimmy Nesbitt. Do you not like him? No.
I'm sorry, like I do hate to criticize actors. Like I find it, criticizing performances is one thing, but like to say I don't like an actor is a bit of a dick thing. So like I'm sure he's a lovely man, and I've liked
It's
his
his
interviews
acting you don't like.
on Graham Norton. Do you say is his accent?
No,
It's
it's
not his
acting.
accent.
It's acting.
Oh yeah, it's his acting. On I mean I suppose I think I've only really seen him in Stanley's Lucky Man.
Yeah. Great
And I
show.
suppose he's playing a somewhat unlikable character, right? I
Yeah.
mean, I
Yeah. I
haven't
suppose
seen
so.
season two. Is that the goal? Like, is he meant to be an unlikable character?
Yeah, like he's supposed to be like a morally ambiguous, like complex character. But I would say overall you are supposed to like him, but he definitely has like things that you'd question him on. It's a fantastic show. It's one of my favorites actually. So good.
Yeah, maybe it's just my experience with his acting in that series, because I didn't give it a full chance, and I don't think I've given him a full chance. But I should go and watch some more Jimmy Nesbitt content.
You see the Northern Irish accent. I don't know whether it's because we're from here. The accent, it just sounds really bad. Like it sounds like really poor acting. What do you think
Yeah,
people from
it
America?
sounds fake. Like
It
it sounds
does.
like he's an American taking the piss out of Northern Irish people.
Yeah. I know. Like I actually no, I do like his accent, but like Liam Neeson is a good accent, I think, because it's not overly Northern Irish.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose it's just dependent on what you consider to be a Northern Irish accent. Because I
Yeah, that's a
mean,
good point.
obviously, anytime we hear someone doing a fake one, it's like wildly ridiculous. Like I would say to us, it probably sounds like when people do like an Australian accent and they're like, "Oh, go die, put a shrimp on the barbie." Like they do like a ridiculously over enunciated, overreach of an accent. Like I feel like that's always what people do when they do a fake Northern Irish.
Have you ever heard Pierce Brosnan's Northern Irish accent?
Oh, I have to imagine it's terrible.
There's a line in The Foreigner with Jackie Chan where like can I give you a brief? It's not really a massive spoiler, like nothing. Can I just
Yeah,
tell you what?
sure.
Okay, so Jackie Chan's character poisons his dog, and Pierce Brosnan goes, "Did you just shit my dog?" But it sounds like you're really over the top.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
there certainly are people that sound like that. It's just that,
Yeah.
the like popular culture and media would have you believe that that's all Northern
Yeah.
Irish accents,
Yeah.
like sort of how they popularized like the Queen's English, like the poshest English accent you can possibly have.
Yeah.
That's what every American does as like the default. So that's why like when Americans like move to England, they're like, oh my God, I love the British accent, and like what they mean
Yeah.
is
That
what they
was
mean
good
is like
about
the
it.
Queen. What they mean, well, that was meant to be like Valley Girl, like
That was good.
dumb idiot.
That was good.
So I mean, like they sort of think that like one, they think that when they say they like the British accent, like there's one, that they mean what they mean
Yeah.
is an English accent, and
Yeah.
two, what they mean by an English accent is they mean like the Queen's English in a certain part of London, which is
Yeah.
like a tiny part of England, which is one part of the United Kingdom.
Yeah.
So I mean, have you heard that a lot? Like when people go like,
Yeah.
"Oh, they love the British accent," and then when you like come along with your Northern Irish accent, they're like, "Piss off."
Piss off. Yeah. Accents are really interesting to me. Like how people speak differently, like how people inherit an accent. It's a weird one to me. Like I don't know, but
Yeah, I feel like accents get a lot of play on the Movie Mates podcast, but it is interesting,
it's
especially
interesting.
just how Hollywood decides to depict them. I guess
Yeah.
they just go with the most generic. I mean, with obviously generic is the most easy because I mean, often people will do a fake accent. Especially, it's bizarre when in one film, like one person will do like a fake accent. Like say an English person will do an American accent, and then they'll have an American actor doing an English accent in the same film, and it's
Yeah.
kind of just like swap roles. You're both doing
Yeah.
a bad job. So
Yeah.
they sort of make it generic in order to be easy to do. But then that sort of creates like a false stereotype of what accents actually sound like, and then people are surprised when they visit different countries,
Yeah.
and it sort of creates a perception in their head.
It's a great point, Callum. Like, what is your favorite accent? Like, what do you think is the most attractive accent someone can have?
Well, I do listen to the vast majority of how I spend my time is watching TV shows and listening to podcasts. So I do have to say that the Australian accent I have a fondness for.
It's a
The
good shout.
actual Australian accent, not the horrific stereotype that we see in films and TV.
It's a great
What
shout.
would you say for yourself?
I quite like, and this is I like you sort of like American. I do like the American accent, but I also like the Irish accent.
Oh yes, certainly. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, those are just my two takes on that one. But it's an interesting chat, buddy. It's an interesting chat. Accents, it's I think it's we've talked a lot about it recently, but it's always a good discussion with you.
Yeah, I mean, we should have just like a section called chat sense.
Yeah, that's a good one. I like it. I like it. Like, yeah, I like that. I like that. Did you want
I
to head
mean,
back?
like it feels like it comes up in like every other episode. Like we don't usually talk about it in the Disney films, but like pretty much anytime we talk about live action films, like we
Accent.
it's usually shitting on a bad accent, but
Yeah,
we haven't really mentioned how amazing Vivian Lee is at accents because I mean,
she's
uh,
British, isn't she?
she's English, yeah, and she obviously did well, I mean, kind of an American accent because I mean, obviously at the time there was this sort of creation called like the transatlantic accent where it would
Alice
be
in
sort of
Wonderland type.
yeah, it would be all of the good parts of the American accent blended with like all of the good parts of the English accent. So they
Mhm.
would sort of do an American accent with sort of enunciated like English quirks to the
Mhm.
accent, and sort of actresses like Vivian Lee popularized that, and I think that's especially apparent. She seems quite southern in A Streetcar Named Desire, but in Gone with the Wind, she's very much relying on the transatlantic accent.
Yeah, that's great. That's a fantastic discussion, buddy. Did you want to move back to Casablanca then?
Yeah, sure. So I would say probably the most iconic thing about this film, there isn't like I don't think there's a scene or a character that's exceptionally famous, that would have broken through and I would have had knowledge of. But I would say the most famous thing about this film is the phrase "Here's looking at you, kid."
Yeah.
And this sort of seems like a rare instance where I feel like we watch a lot of stuff and we sort of go, oh, I'm surprised that they didn't know that would be such a hit, or oh, this like no one knew that this twist or this phrase would take the world by storm.
Mhm.
But they say the phrase "Here's looking at you, kid" maybe 5 or 6 times in this film. It isn't like a once-off quote. It isn't like a rule of three. Like Rick says this 5 or 6 times.
Mhm.
So I think they were like actively trying to make it a thing. Like I think they were
Yeah.
trying to like
Yeah.
make a popular catchphrase that would like characterize or epitomize the film. Yes. So the whole crux of this story is the fact that Victor and Ilsa are there to try and get a visa to return back to the U.S. But surely, if Victor has escaped a concentration camp, he's obviously anti-fascist, which is the position of the U.S. So surely, if he just called up the embassy and like sought asylum, like does he need a visa if he's an American citizen?
Yeah, it's a good point. It's a good point, actually. Yeah, I never actually, I can never actually consider that, buddy. That's a fantastic point, and like, because he's an American, he should be able to travel. He should be travel legally to America to and fro, couldn't he?
I was going to say genuinely because of the transatlantic accent where they're sort of doing this weird, like half American, half British. I don't know what characters are meant to be American and which
I
aren't.
think Rick is supposed to be American. Yeah.
Yeah, Rick's undoubtedly meant to be American, but I honestly don't know about Ilsa and Victor because obviously, Victor has been in Europe this entire time, and that's where he was captured.
Mhm.
And Ilsa has also been in Europe, and they were sort of in Paris until like Rick and Ilsa were in Paris until the invasion.
Mhm.
So yeah, until the occupation by the Nazis.
Yeah.
So I sort of don't understand why he would have to illegally obtain a visa when he could
Yeah.
hopefully just request it due to citizenship. But
A great point.
I genuinely don't understand that stuff. And obviously, I've never been to America. I know you have, so I've never had to go through the process of getting a visa for anywhere. So it may just be my ignorance to the subject.
Well, man, I think the movie Mates on Tour. We should go to America one day.
Just in the Statue of Liberty, we talk about more American classics.
Mm, absolutely.
So yes, just look. I mean,
No
do
worries.
you cut out the parts where I just like go, and what the fuck am I looking for?
That's I keep that in because it's real.
Yeah, it's real. That's what they want to hear.
Yeah.
Yeah, desperately. It's just that I don't have a huge amount to say because
Me neither.
as we've mentioned, like Victor has no desire to keep himself hidden, even though he's been captured over and
Yeah.
over by by the Nazis and put in concentration camps, and how he finds himself to be some sort of what I don't like. What am I even saying? Uh, yeah, like every like it's sort of I said my points out of order, so now I'm confusing myself. But basically, I'm just glad that Rick wasn't left. He wasn't left in Casablanca. In a terrible position. The film ends very optimistically, and I'm glad. Did you hear that?
I heard that.
That was so aggressive.
Someone have a was that a car toot?
That was a car honk, but it was like, oh, that was horrific.
That was
You know
aggressive.
that Yeah, people are just aggressive in my area. My dad is not one to honk his horn, but
He's a good
and
driver
he's
though.
he's a very
He's a
he's a very
good driver.
safe and nice driver. But
Mhm.
people are just so needlessly aggressive on the road, honestly. Which is why I've been tentative in learning how to drive because honestly, other drivers scare me. Just because I'll probably be overly safe and they'll be overly unsafe, and that's the idea sort of terrifies me
Yeah.
of that being sort of a lethal combination.
Yeah. Like, yeah, the reason why I haven't done it is because I'm generally quite lazy about it. Like, but also I generally don't mind using public transport.
I know, yeah. I mean, I was gonna say, and also I have friends who drive, but that sounds a bit, like over reliant. I don't want to be like too codependent on the friends that can drive. But yeah, I genuinely, I sometimes enjoy walking places. I don't mind
Yeah.
getting the bus. Obviously, in these times, I haven't gone on a bus in maybe 4 months. I know you're more of a regular to that just because you live far away. So yeah, I'm gonna take probably an adjustment period getting back to that.
Mhm.
But yeah, I just don't have a provisional license. Despite being 18, I have to like pull out my passport at the club, as you know. which
Love it.
I don't think we've ever actually entered a club together. Like
Not
we've
not
always
yet.
just
Not yet.
met in the club.
Yeah.
Because I think we've only had two nights out together.
Yeah.
In a club, and even saying a club's generous. One was a bar, and one was a club. But
What a fine
I
bar it
mean,
was.
yeah, it was a fine bar. But like, I mean, you can't imagine how embarrassing it is. Just like, because I mean, I look like a heroin addict in my passport photo. Uh, and like on my 18th birthday, I went to a club in town, and I think I told you this, but they looked at my ID and saw that it was my birthday, and they either said it's your birthday or you look like a baby, because I feel like bouncers just speak in such a mutterance. It's so
Yeah.
hard to tell what they're saying to you,
Yeah.
except like when they're clearly angry at you, like because they think you've done something wrong. The aggression certainly comes through. Like I kept being questioned that one night, the one night out that we did have in a club. You know, they went like, uh, "How much have you had to drink?" I was like, "Nothing," and they said, "What have you been drinking?" I was like,
Nothing.
no alcohol. Like,
Yeah.
what are you asking me? I mean, like,
Yeah.
did you get that? Did you get? Because I went to that club completely sober and then got shit faced there, whereas you had actually had a
A
cider
cider.
before going.
Damn
So
straight.
when they did they ask you if you'd had any alcohol before?
They did not. Must have
Because
just
I
been your
mean,
look. They're just like this
yeah, I
guy
know that that
drinking having
club
a
in
good time.
particular, like they don't want to admit drunk people, because they're not going to buy as many drinks, and also they'll probably cause a scene.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, I don't know. I don't like. I think I give off a very like chill, not drunk, but like I'm very unenthusiastic. I really don't think I give off a vibe of drunkenness. So I don't know what caused him to believe that, but I'll take it as a compliment that I just seem like a fun guy.
Absolutely. Absolutely, man. Absolutely. But we a good. See, I'm not a huge fan of nights out to clubs and bars, but with you, it's good. You know what I mean? It's always a good time.
Yeah, I was kind of confused by people's sort of desperation to get back to going to bars, because I feel like a club energy, like the concept of a club energy certainly exists. I can understand like, the the mob mentality of the music going and you're all dancing, you're having fun, you're all drunk. Like I kind of understand that, but I don't think a bar vibe. I don't think that concept exists. Like obviously with the bars opening recently, people were sort of clamoring back, to get back to them. And people were making reservations and people were trying to go back, on first day. And like they're literally just going to the outside area to have a pint. I'm like, you can do that in anybody's garden. Like
Yeah.
surely the
Good point.
entire like the appeal of a club is like getting shit faced and going for a dance with like horrible techno music and lights going. So that's one thing, but surely going to a bar or a pub is just you hanging out with your mates and having a pint, which you
Yeah.
can do literally anywhere. So
Good point.
I don't understand the fascination.
Yeah, it's a good point, man. I like a good night in with. I like a good night in a movie or something. It's my ideal night.
Yeah, that is ideal. So certainly, when you talk about like, a night out with mates, obviously if you're going on a date scenario, that it's obviously it's nice sometimes, to get out.
Mm.
But I think when you just when the intention is to just have a fun time with your mates, I don't see or yeah, I don't see why you need to leave the house. I mean, that sounds very like introverted of me, but
Oh, I know what you mean.
I think you can definitely have as fun inside the house as you can at a bar.
Absolutely, absolutely, man, absolutely. Um, in terms of Casablanca, like I don't have a huge more amount to say just apart from the ending, buddy.
Yeah, go ahead. I've said my piece.
I really loved Rick's sacrifice. Rick's sacrifice. It is quite heartbreaking, but also like I love the twist that sort of Frank Reno sort of changes his mind and Rick goes, Frank, I think this is the start of a beautiful friendship. Like I really love that. I thought that was so well written.
Yeah, and I think that was a much better example of just an immediately iconic quotable scene that didn't feel forced, because I would say the most famous quote, as we said, is "Here's looking at you, kid," and I would say that's probably the second most iconic. But like this film is full of iconic moments, but I'd say that that final moment, it's very like understated and unintentionally iconic, and I think that's probably one of the moments in the film that I respect most.
Did you expect the Renault twist that he's actually a decent guy?
I didn't, to be honest. I thought that Rick was probably just going to shoot everybody. So
Yeah.
I was very surprised to see that Renault helps him cover up the fact that it was Rick that had shot
Yeah.
the Nazi soldier, right? Yeah. So, or he was a general, right?
Yeah, I think it was a Nazi general, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I didn't expect the twist, to be honest. What were your thoughts?
No, completely unexpected, and I loved it, man. I loved it. It warmed my heart, to be honest, because it was such a perfect ending to such a classic film, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I thought that he always seemed like a sweet guy. He was obviously involved in bribery and gambling. But for a corrupt authority figure, he seemed like a comparatively nice corrupt
Yeah,
authority figure.
ab-
I was rooting for him to redeem himself, and he did. So
absolutely.
as you said, it was a heartwarming moment.
Any more concluding remarks from you, buddy?
No, nothing more for me other than I just had a surprisingly great time.
Yeah, man. I'd love to hear your rating, buddy.
Yeah, so once again, this is incredibly iconic. For many people, this is regarded as you know uh, one of the best films of all time, and I can certainly see that. Especially at the time. I
Mhm.
would say this and Citizen Kane are probably the two oldest films that I've actually enjoyed. I think I've seen a couple of films that are older than these, but I've never actually enjoyed them. I've tolerated them or not enjoyed them whatsoever.
Yeah.
So the fact that you can actually hold the attention of like 21st century young adults, I think is incredible. That you can actually have that carryover of quality,
Absolutely.
80 years on. I don't think any film that's made recently, will have that sense of longevity. So I think that this has to be regarded as one of the most iconic films of all time.
Absolutely.
I would give it a 9.5 out of 10.
Love that, buddy. You had some fantastic points as always there, Callum. And for me, I'd have to agree with you. This is my favorite film that I've seen out of the four so far. And for me, I think it's such a special film and one that'll always like hold a place in my heart. So I'd have to give it a 10 out of 10. Masterpiece, man. I loved it. I think that's three 10 out of 10s I've given today. But I'll probably look back and
Yeah,
think I'm overrating them. But no, this has been a good episode, man. American Classics is certainly fitting the title so far.
I'm very interested to see what you'll have to say about Gone with the Wind.
I'm looking forward to
Because I have some. I don't think they're hot takes. They certainly shouldn't be. I
it.
have some takes certainly that it's garbage pretty much. But we'll get onto that soon.
Yeah. Is it black and white or not?
Gone with the Wind, shockingly, is despite being made in 1939, it's actually in full color.
Cool. Because I've got the Blu-ray for it, but like I wasn't sure if it was black or white or color. This is interesting, man.
Yeah, because a lot of the films, of this sort of era, Casablanca, and I would say two of the big famous examples would be Casablanca and It's a Wonderful Life. Were retroactively colorized. Their color was added to them, even though they were shot and released originally in black and
Sure.
white,
Yeah,
which
yeah.
had like a huge controversy because people, will want to see it in its sort of unadulterated fashion. So I
Mhm.
thought that was sort of the treatment that was given to Gone with the Wind, but apparently it was that just not a lot of people used color filming technology, but it was fully available. But
Mhm.
it's sort of surprising to see that up until like the 50s and the 60s, they were still using that technology widely.
Absolutely, buddy. Absolutely. So I suppose it's time to move on to potentially the probably the best regarded film out of the five. Would you agree?
Well, I mean, by many, this is regarded as the greatest film of all time. It's top of the AFI's 100 films for 100 years. In every iteration of that list of like the American Film Institute's 100 best films of all time, Citizen Kane always ranks number one.
Hmm.
And there's this popular culture. Uh, you know, I think a lot of people respect this film, but almost nobody enjoys it.
Yeah.
Uh, and so that's why going in, I had this huge perception that I was going to hate it. I had this real strong, like really strong feeling that I would like thoroughly dislike this film, because obviously people study it for its revolutionary filmmaking and every
Sure.
good element about it. I thought that people respected it but didn't enjoy it, and I think that is true, but it certainly wasn't the case for me. How did you feel going into it?
I love this. Yeah, like I absolutely love this film, and for me, it's sort of it's a weird one. Like I watched this on BBC iPlayer. I don't know how I
Yeah,
it's
shit. I was so annoyed when I found out it was on BBC iPlayer because I had like gone through a rigmarole to watch it.
Yeah, I don't know how it made its way on there, to be honest. But anyway, but yeah, like I had heard a lot about this film. It's certainly up there with like The Godfather Part One and Two, and obviously like Casablanca and Gone with the Wind. Is sort of like one of the best films of all time, and I can definitely see why. And maybe that's why I love it so much is like it's got a similar narrative structure to like 500 Days of Summer, in the sense that
I knew you were gonna bring it up. I knew it.
yeah, and it's very Tarantino-esque in the sense that it rewrites history by adding this character of Charles Foster Kane into society. He marries the president's niece. He runs for he runs for a governor position. He's basically the real life Rupert Murdoch, or sorry, the fictional
Yeah,
Rupert Murdoch in this film in many ways. But I think this is probably one of the best character studies I've ever seen.
yeah. I think it's honestly sensational. And if you want to talk about sort of, I mean, obviously this is a revolutionary film,
Mhm.
and you know, uh, it started a lot of trends, and it popularized a lot of filmmaking techniques and narrative techniques. So I assumed that I was going to be overly critical of this film and sort of judge it with my modern standards, but I think that I managed to sort of like place myself in the shoes of the time, and
Mhm.
see it through that perspective. About it being the first to do a lot of things. So I don't think I did really judge it that harshly, but I think that this film opens in a very smart manner, because I was going to openly criticize the opening, because it's in black. Well, the whole film's in black and white, but it's a newsreel that is providing heavy exposition, with text written on the screen. That's how
Yeah.
you're meant to read the text. That is how news bulletins were done. So I thought it was simultaneously spoon feeding and confusing the audience. But then, we're reminded that it's a news bulletin, which is then actually criticized by the employer
Yeah.
of the journalist that put it together. So I was like, well, I obviously can't criticize a thing in the film that's there to be criticized by people in the film.
Yeah.
It was just really complex and smart, and I really respected it.
Absolutely. I think this is definitely a rare case where, exposition enhances the film, and it really gives you a backstory on this guy, Charles Foster Kane. And, even the opening sequence, man, this is some of the best cinematography I've ever seen. The opening sequence alone is so ahead of its time with the reflection in the snow globe. And obviously, it's got the recurring motif of, what is Rosebud? What is this? What is this? These final words of this, conglomerate, this tycoon, this Rupert Murdoch figure. So it's such a really interesting film. Orson Welles, I think he directed this as well. What a talented guy. What a talented guy.
Yeah,
And
it was his directorial debut as well.
similar sense to another Joseph Gordon-Levitt film, Don John. He stars and directs it, and very good opening directorial debuts for both actors. And for me, I think Orson Welles, he kind of reminds me of like Sebastian Stan, but also like a David Jason from Only Fools and Horses.
Hmm. The person that I would closely associate him with would be Eldon Henson, Foggy Nelson from Daredevil,
Good
because
shite, good shite.
I
Yeah,
think they look identical. Honestly,
he looks a bit
I
like
think he
Winston
could play
Churchill.
a really great young Orson Welles.
Yeah, he looks a little bit like a young Winston Churchill, I think.
Oh yeah, I 100% see that, definitely.
Yeah, he's such a talented guy, and you know, the film has so many complex characters, and one thing I really enjoy about it is the film's entirely subjective. When this interviewer is interviewing different characters in Kane's life, each story is told from one perspective only. It could all be bullshit, which I quite like. Like a lot of characters have reason to bullshit their story because they've had bad experiences with Charles Kane. So it's such an interesting one, man. The whole film could be up the subject, like could be subjective. But by the end of it, none of the story really matters because you find out what Rosebud means. So it's just I just love this film so much.
Yeah, I actually didn't even take the moment to consider that because I mean, yeah, the depiction of the character is much more favorable and likable when it's told by Mr. Bernstein,
Yeah,
as opposed to told by
Susan.
Mr. Leland and by Susan Alexander. So
Mhm.
yeah, I hadn't even considered that, but yeah, of course. Uh, I suppose it was just because in the news bulletin they sort of say that he sort of divided popular opinion that half of the world believed everything he said, loved him, and then half of them hated him. But I
Yeah,
mean that's probably true of every celebrity that exists.
yeah,
So it's not necessarily that he was an inherently bad guy. It was maybe that just people thought ill of him and had these terrible memories. But yeah, it could easily be an unreliable narrator situation. And because of this sort of disjointed narrative, it'll probably seem like we're jumping about the place, with talking about his childhood, then his adulthood, then his childhood, then his adulthood. But that is the structure of the film.
mhm,
So early in the film, we do see him as a child, and we find out that his mother invested in a mine which discovered gold. So that meant that they were now rich, but they wanted it handled by the bank. So they sign over guardianship of their child to a bank,
yeah,
and I don't understand how this sort of like consensual kidnapping, sort of situation is legal whatsoever.
yeah. That's a weird. I actually really felt bad for Kane in that instance. I think that's definitely a scene that makes you sympathize with this character, and also it is quite hilarious when he pushes Thatcher with like the sled as well. But Thatcher just like falls over like ugh, like that is quite funny. But yeah, it's quite it's weird, man, because in that scene you think Kane's father is quite a nice guy, but then when Kane like obviously rightly so becomes outraged, he's like, that boy deserves a good beating. And I was
Yeah.
like that is brutal, man. Like I suppose like yeah, contemporary issues at the time like that, but even still, man, like yeah, it's that was a very weird scene, but also I really did feel bad for the character.
Well, yeah, because I mean, they just like seem to excuse, like like purchase of a child as being,
Yeah,
completely excusable just because they're rich. Like I know that the wealth needed to be looked after by a bank. That's perfectly understandable. But why, when they realized that they were now rich, were they like, we'll give it all to Charles, but then he has to like go, like he can't live with us anymore. It never it never connected with me. Like I never really understood the motivation.
yeah, it's a great point, buddy. It's a great point, and this is going to be a very strange comparison, but many scenes in this film remind me of characters from the Raimi trilogy. In a sense that like Susan's failed opera career and the media criticism, she reminds me of Mary Jane in Spider-Man 3. And also like when Charles reminded me of J. Jonah Jameson when he fires Leland. Like Leland comes into his office like, "You wanted to talk to me, Kane?" And then Kane's like, "Yeah, you're fired." And I thought that was absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a reason that I hadn't stopped to think of that because it is probably a weird consideration to
It is, yeah.
compare the greatest film of all time to
Another greatest film of all time.
Spider-Man. Yeah, the other greatest film of all time, Spider-Man 3, I guess. I mean, yeah, what is the firing scene? Is it the one where he like fires Brock in Spider-Man 3
Yeah,
that you're like
no,
comparing it to?
it's the bit where it's the bit in like Spider-Man 2 where like Peter loses his job at like the pizzeria, and then he comes into Jameson and Jameson's like, "Parker, you're fired." And then Parker's like, "What?" Love it.
I need to watch those movies again. Honestly, they were like the highlight of my childhood.
So good, man. So good. Check out episode, I think it's 8 of the podcast where we did the Raimi trilogy.
Yeah, I think it is episode 8. So, we've talked about the talent of the actors in this film, and obviously, we're told in the credits that this is actually the first appearance, like the film debut of many of the actors in this film.
Yeah,
The majority of the main characters are played by theater actors who hadn't, made the jump to film.
sure.
But I do feel like acting at the time was basically just shouting and interrupting people. Like I got that sense a lot. I would say, the only other film, like I would say this is probably the second oldest film I'd ever seen up until this point. I'd seen Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, which I think was 1939, and then I saw this, which is from 1931. So at the point, I think this is probably the second oldest film I've ever seen, and sort of a fair comparison in in regards to, sort of importance to the film industry and, how they revolutionized their genre, it's probably a fair comparison to, compare Citizen Kane with Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, in the sense that this shaped film, like,
Oh
film as
yeah.
a whole, whereas, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs was like an unprecedented, like, animated feature.
Yeah, and this film absolutely destroyed it at the Oscars, didn't it, man? This film did so well, and it's such a fantastic film, And I one of the big questions in this film, and I was very confused, and this isn't necessarily a criticism of it, but I wanted to ask you, like, what do you think the message of this film is, or the main theme it presents? Because I was like thinking about this for like 10 or 15 minutes, and I was like, I can't put my finger on the message it's trying to present. Is it trying to suggest that, you know, like money can't buy happiness? Is that what it's trying to suggest, or what do you think it is?
See, yeah, that's definitely sort of the, like, initially I didn't think there was a message, and then I knew that the film ended with sort of like, the burning of the sled and the revelation that was Rosebud. And I suppose it all really boils down to why Rosebud was his final word.
Hmm.
And I suppose it's that was his last memory of, proper innocence. And, maybe obviously you said that we have sort of the unreliable narrator, so we can't really value the stories that the people have been telling about his character. So he may have been sort of a self-loathing person that didn't believe that, that he was like a good moral person anymore. So he may imbue a lot of importance with Rosebud, because that's the last time he remembers being like an innocent moral person.
Yeah,
So yeah, it's maybe
fair
it's
point.
maybe
Love that.
the like the wealth corrupts the innocent.
Such a great point, buddy. And like, we'll get into the Rosebud bit later on in the podcast, because that's sort of the main like crux of the film. That's the main talking point. But I think, yeah, it's definitely a mix of that, buddy. Yeah, completely. And I think the film wants you to understand that he's a very morally ambiguous and morally condemnable character. Like, he's just a very, he cheats on his wife. He forces his wife, his second wife, tries to commit suicide, obviously, because he's forcing her into an opera career that she doesn't want to do. It's such a real film, like we said, the real life Rupert Murdoch, owning this media newspaper company. Like, it's just crazy, buddy. It really is, and it's such a fantastic character study of this character. Like, you'd almost think he was real, he existed in real life. To be honest, you think it's like a biopic or something.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it was sort of a like a combination of, five or six contemporary figures,
Hmm.
and I think he was based in particular on, I don't remember his name, but it's like sort of the patriarch of like this, the Hearst dynasty.
Yeah.
Was it William? I think it was William Randolph Hearst. He was sort of the main influence for this character, and so like, reviews and comments about this film were banned from his newspaper, because he didn't really want any
Bad publicity.
tenuous links made between him and the character, obviously because of, his morally condemnable nature. But sort of to move on to why this film is considered such a success, uh, the big things that are praised about this film are the narrative structure, the music, the cinematography, and the editing. And I would say that widely all of those are great, aside from the music, because I think that the music is incredibly composed. It's very good music, but it rarely matches the scene that it's in.
It's a great point.
I find that, in a lot of the like dramatic contemplative scenes of the film, there's also like accompanied like this like womp a womp, like, comedy,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
like
yeah.
comedic piece that,
Slapstick stuff. Yeah.
yeah, like, it's like, oh, what a funny bit of misfortune, rather than this is like a devastating scene of drama. It just
Yeah.
didn't link up for me.
I have a question for you, man. Was there ever a point in the film where you felt bad for Charles Foster Kane? Because there was a bit that I sort of did feel bad for him at the start, was when Susan leaves him, but then it sort of contrasts that by him saying, like, how have you done this to me? And then it's obviously like very hypocritical for him to say that. So was there any point that he made, aside from like the childhood bit, was there any point that you felt sympathy for him?
I suppose not, because I mean, when he was sort of riding high in his Inquirer career, I was like, okay, this is a nice guy. Good things are happening to him. He has wealth, so there was nothing. Whilst I liked the character, then I didn't feel sad for him, because
Mm.
his life was on the up. It was
Mm.
it was increasing in quality. He was
Yeah.
already wealthy, but he was also, now getting a successful career. And then sort of as his career declined, he became a more bitter man. So I became less and less empathetic towards him. So I don't think there was ever a point after his childhood that I felt sympathy for him. No.
You're
Did you feel any?
just for the childhood bit, buddy. So not a huge amount, to be honest with you. And I definitely think that was an intention of Orson Welles to present like a character who you're not supposed to side with, really. And strangely enough, he's not really in the film for a huge amount, not as much as I was expecting for the titular character, to be honest.
Yeah, and Citizen Kane, like the title Citizen Kane, like what does that say to you?
Man
Because I
of
mean,
the
he's never
people.
really, yeah, exactly. Because he never does really adopt that role. He's never just some guy. He's always like this tycoon, or he's like perspective politician. He never does seem like a man of the people.
Yeah.
So do you think that title is sort of that title is ironic?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the film definitely intentionally subverts that when like he stands for governor, and that makes you think, okay, man of the people, Citizen Kane, vote for me. But then it tears that facade down when it's revealed that yeah, he's having an affair. So I think he wants to be Citizen Kane. He wants to be liked. But in a similar sense to like David Brent in The Office, he's desperately, and that's a silly comparison, but he desperately wants to be liked by other people, but he can't be liked by other people because he's not like other people. Do you know what I mean? Like I'm trying to think of a real world example. Like it's very hard for like let's use Alan Sugar for example. Like it's very hard for Alan Sugar to be one of the people. I mean, it's impossible for him to be a normal guy because he's a billionaire. He can't be one of the people. He can't be a man of the people. But and I don't want to get too political with Donald Trump. Like Donald Trump desperately wants to be a man of the people. I mean, that's why he ran for office. But he knows he can't be. It's impossible for him to be a man of the people, even though he's president. Like it's impossible for him to understand the troubles of people who are living in the streets and the people who are unemployed. It's impossible for him to comprehend that, in my opinion. So like I think that's really the character of Citizen Kane, what he embodies. He's desperate, what he wants to be that Citizen Kane, but he can't be there, so he has to settle for a man who cheats on his wife, a man who forces his wife to do an opera career, a man who desperately wants power but is he's in a power struggle with himself almost.
Yeah, yeah, that was great. Yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, just the phrase like forcing her to do an opera career just is hilarious.
Yeah, it sounds
Uh,
ridiculous. Yeah,
but yeah, it sounds ridiculous, but he obviously does use manipulative techniques to
absolutely.
I suppose have her meet like this standard of woman. Like he needs a person of a particular social status. He needs
Yeah,
either someone with power or a star. I guess he can't
yeah,
just settle for who she wants to be.
yeah.
But we've sort of talked about his success at the newspaper, and quite honestly, I've never seen a bigger horde of arse lickers than
Tell me
his
about it.
employees, who were literally
Yeah,
like
yeah.
cackling at his every word. And there's one point where
Arse
Mr.
lick.
Bernstein says, "Where did you learn that, Charlie?" Which he says in amazement as like Kane awkwardly clip clops around and touches women inappropriately. He's like, "Where did you learn that, Charlie?"
Yeah. They are, yeah. It is that scene actually made me. I think that's definitely intentionally like ridiculous. In my opinion, that's such it is ridiculous, and it's
Yeah,
it's you can sort of imagine that happening in real life with these big tycoons and stuff like that. The yes men around them and women and yes men and women. So it's one of those things, man. It's one of those things, and going back to like Susan Alexander's opera career, it baffles me that people think she's a bad opera singer. I think she's absolutely fantastic.
I know. Like opera is probably I'm not a big rap fan. I'm not a big R&B fan, but I would say opera is the lowest the lowest genre on my preferences.
Me too.
But I have to say, like I thought she was great, and people are like covering their ears and telling her how shit she is, and I thought she was one of the best opera singers I've heard.
Absolutely, absolutely, man.
I mean, I already have a low bar, but I've heard, you know, I've
Yeah,
heard music from people who are considered the best opera singers ever, and I thought that, you know, Susan, you know,
absolutely.
had a great
Holds her
standard
own.
of singing.
Absolutely, buddy. Absolutely.
So I have a serious question about Mr. Bernstein,
Go for it.
because you know, I didn't do much research into, you know, other people's you know, interpretations that they drew from the film, because, you know, I like to try and make my own mind up.
Mhm.
But I was just wondering whether you agree with the idea that Mr. Bernstein was perhaps in love
Ooh,
with Charles,
good shout.
because he sort of you know, he sort of agreed with and justified all of Kane's views. He judged all of the women that Kane romanced as like unworthy of him.
Yeah.
And then after his death, he lamented him greatly and had like a portrait of him like put above his fireplace.
Mhm.
So I was just wondering, do you think I'm like reading into that? Do you
No,
think
that's
it
a
was
good
just
call.
intense? Do you think it was an intense friendship, or do you think that there was maybe romantic feelings on Bernstein's side?
I'd never considered that, man. You're so good at like delving into films, and I think that's such a fantastic point, Callum. And I'd have to agree with you, man. There's definitely those undertones there, subtle undertones. And I'm trying to think of like a modern contemporary example of that happening in another film where like a character has like feelings for them, but do you know what I mean? I'm trying to think. Can you think of any
Well,
examples?
I thought it really came across like, you know, Smithers and Mr. Burns from The Simpsons.
Yeah,
You
absolutely.
know, where he's sort of his subordinate, but he's clearly in love with him. You know,
Yeah,
despite him, you know, obviously rebuffing any you know emotional connection, let alone a romantic one.
yeah, yeah. That's a good shout. Actually, yeah. Yeah, I love that, man. That's such an interesting point. Plus, Mr. Burns is my favorite Simpsons character. So
Yeah, I've never been a Simpsons fan, but I would say that, you know, Mr. Burns and Mr. Smithers are probably like they're the top tier of the characters in that show.
absolutely, because he owns the power plant, doesn't he, Mr. Burns?
Yeah, and he owns a lot of real estate in Springfield. Like, have you watched a lot of The Simpsons? Because honestly, I have not. I've probably watched, you know, the equivalent of like the amount of episodes of like a couple of seasons. Like,
Yeah, me too.
I was
I'm the
never a
same.
fan.
I've watched the movie and I really love the movie.
Yeah, it's really good, I guess, if you enjoy the series, because I think it is a good continuation of that. But I don't I don't know. It just seems very repetitive, and you know, I think people, even the biggest fans of the series, you know, said it peaked around like season 10, and that it's kind of just beating a dead horse now.
What do you think the audience for The Simpsons is? Because I remember when I was like 6, I was like, "Oh, The Simpsons. This is what the cool like 22-year-olds watch." You know, but that's I don't know. What do you think the audience of it is?
I
Maybe
think the
something like
current seasons are pretty much just kids, and then I think adults go back and watch the seasons that they actually enjoyed as kids. Because, like, you know, I know plenty of people that, you know, really love The Simpsons, and they say, like, you know, what, like, seasons 1 to 10 were like the, you know, the golden
yeah.
era,
Mhm.
and now it's like really dipped in quality. So I don't think a lot of people, I don't think a lot of people over the age of 18 like watch the new release of The Simpsons. Like, I think they do watch The Simpsons, but it's all the episodes that they feel nostalgic for, they know are of high quality.
Are they still making that?
Oh yeah, it's like I think it's on something ridiculous like season 27 or something. I think it's been renewed
Wow.
through to season 30.
Wow. Good going. Like it must be one of the most long and running shows of all time.
Yeah, because I'd also heard that, you know, like It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia was you know, with the renewal of its like 15th season, it was the longest running comedy series of all time. But obviously The Simpsons has been going for, you know, decades. So I assume it must have just been in regards to live action.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think 30 seasons is too long. Like,
Beating a
you
dead
can't
horse.
have quality storytelling for 30 years.
Yeah. It's a good point. It's a good point, man. I don't have that much really to say apart from the Rosebud bits, mate. So anything else from you, buddy?
Well, like what I find most like one of the funniest jokes in the film is
Paper.
the paper when you know, Charles has an affair with Susan Alexander. The fact that she is her moniker in the paper is quote unquote singer. I just
Yeah.
find that hilarious
Yeah, that
because, I
was
mean, you know, if you choose to sing professionally, you are a singer. You know, the quality of your singing, it like does not affect, you know, your occupation. You know, if
yeah,
you're a terrible singer, you're still a singer.
great point.
It just felt needlessly cruel and
It did.
insulting.
Yeah, the fact that he he himself like finishes off the article is even more brutal.
Yeah, that was horrific. But I would say the only audible laugh that I had in this film is when Jed Leland comes to Kane and he goes, "I'm drunk," and I was just like, is that just like, did they just write that line specifically because they knew that the performance wasn't going to be convincing enough?
Yeah, I know. That was a good one, man. That was a good one. Like it's such a strange out of nowhere line that.
Yeah, I mean, it was actually like we have that, like, they announced that they're drunk in this film. They announced that they're drunk in A Streetcar Named Desire. They announced that they're drunk in To Kill a Mockingbird. Was it just of the time, like
Of the
they
time.
knew that they weren't going to be convincing? I suppose just because they couldn't show like empty bottles of alcohol for like censorship reasons, so like they
Yeah,
had to announce it,
yeah, that's a
for
good point.
whatever regulations.
It's a great point.
But we've sort of talked about the Charles's affair with Susan Alexander, and like what I found odd was, obviously in modern times, we're very, the youth and like the young voters are very socially and politically aware. So we're very aware of the fact that, a lot of the high-ranking political leaders right now are adulterers, and that sort of doesn't impact anyone's decision right now to vote them in,
Yeah,
which is sort of baffling, because
great
you would have
point.
thought that we were more socially clued in and politically clued in. And in this film, it's Kane's adultery that stops him from being voted in as governor. So, like, do you think it's just our modern do you think our modern moral compass has decreased in regards to that? Like, do you think we've just like we have this sort of sense of like we've seen it all? Like, of
Yeah, I
course
think
they're an
so.
adulterer.
Yeah,
Like,
I think that is definitely an issue of like we've seen it all, so we'll just let it slide. I think if Kane stood for election in today's society, he probably would win.
yeah, exactly. Because I think he doesn't even seem like an incredibly conservative figure. Like he seems more in a political middle ground. He doesn't really make his political stance clear. He
Yeah,
just says that he'll like his only platform that we see is that he plans to jail his opponent, which seems fair enough because his opponent is a blackmailer. So it doesn't really give us a clear perspective on like his political views.
yeah,
But yeah, I think if he was a figure that ran today, he would definitely win because I mean we're
absolutely.
fully aware that plenty of political leaders are racist, homophobic, sexist, and then when we find out that they're an adulterer as well, we're like, oh well, of course,
Yeah,
just add it to the list, and then we're like, but yeah, let's vote them in anyway. It just baffles me, like sort of
it does. Yeah,
the political mentality that is there right now.
yeah,
No one worries about the fact that the person that is responsible for using conscience to form laws, to act on on adhering to human rights. If they don't have a moral compass, like how are they going to act as like the
such a
moral
great point,
conscience for
Callum.
lawmaking?
Such a great point, buddy. And yeah, like when you think about, I think a lot of politics, especially in our country, is that as a matter of fact, we vote one in to keep the other out, and not so much like we vote them because we agree with their policies. So it's definitely, I think that's probably why, you know, yeah, like why Kane probably would have won if he would have stood in today's society.
Yeah, definitely. I certainly think so. And I don't even, what am I even saying? Yes. So there's the scene where Kane has finally put on a successful, well, a questionably successful opera for Susan, and
Hmm.
he even realizes like when he's hearing her singing, I thought she was performing very very well. I thought her
Absolutely.
singing was great, and then you see him just like go like dead behind the eyes and go like, oh shit, this is bad,
Yeah.
and then he stands up and claps for her whilst everyone else is silent.
Yeah.
And I did not understand. Like, have you seen the Shia LaBeouf video of actual cannibal Shia LaBeouf? Have I showed you this?
No, I don't think so.
It's sort of like an onstage musical of like people wearing Shia LaBeouf like paper mache heads, and they're like performing this musical piece of like the narrative of the musical piece is that like a woman is like running for her life from Shia LaBeouf, and that he's like a violent serial killer, and then it cuts to him at the end like he's the only person sat in this
Yes,
entire
I've seen
opera
this.
house,
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
he stands up and then claps for her. And I had no idea until I saw that was a reference.
Yeah, no, I remember that. Yeah, I've got you. Shia LaBeouf, like I saw Weekly Planet put up, or sorry, Mr. Sunny Movies put up a caravan of garbage for Transformers, and that's one of my favorite caravan of garbage ones. And Shia LaBeouf, he's a good actor. I stand by it. We've mentioned him in Indiana Jones 4. I like him. Good guy.
Yeah, he seems like a great guy. He's a bit, he goes a bit too far, I think, with method acting. In Fury, he cut his face so it looked more realistic. He pulled out a, did I say Fury?
Yeah.
Yeah, for Fury, he cut his face. He pulled out a tooth. For his most recent film, which is called The Tax Collector, he sort of plays like the money guy for a crime boss, and he tattooed his entire torso, uh, for the film, like with
Love that.
like permanently tattooed himself, and like there's one massive tattoo like across his stomach that just says the Creeper because that's the name of his character, and that's on his body forever.
Forever. That's
Yeah,
dedication. That's dedication, man.
yeah, it's commitment, but it's stupid. But I do love Shia LaBeouf. Like I think he's a great actor. Holes I think is probably his greatest acting feat. I don't know if you've seen it.
Haven't seen it.
It's the best book adaptation I've ever seen. It's pretty much a 1-to-1 adaptation, and he is the perfect casting. He's fantastic in that film. I love the man, and I
Absolutely.
love that video. Did you watch any of the other videos that I sent you recently? Because I sent you the video of the gay men's choir of I think California singing for Laura Dern at the
I didn't watch that one, man.
I think it was the Independent Spirit Awards.
Yeah.
I don't know, that detail might be wrong, but you should watch that because that's hilarious.
I've just been
And then I
rewatching
sent you.
the Aunt May getting blown up, where it's like, it's so good.
Yeah. What was the third video I'd sent you? Because
I'll have a
I
look.
sent you a couple.
I think it was. I know it was the Laura Dern one, and then there was one about Lonely Island performing at the Emmys, and then
Oh yeah, did you watch that?
I didn't watch that. I'll be honest, I didn't watch
It's
that
that
one.
it's a disaster. But it's not even funny. Like it's just cringy.
There's one that says, "Who took the L? Mark McGrath versus Kid."
Yes, did I tell you about this?
No, what is this one?
Okay, this is like the way like there's like YouTube commentary channels.
Yeah.
Like there's these two people called Cody Ko and Noel Miller,
Uh-huh.
and they did a video on like this resurfaced video from like the 90s of like Mark McGrath from Sugar Ray being heckled by this alleged like kid, but he's apparently like he looks like 15 but he's like 21 apparently. But like he like heckles Mark McGrath by going like Sugar Ray more like Sugar Gay, and then
Yeah.
Mark McGrath fucking loses it, and like he's just screaming about abuse at this kid, and like that video is them like commentating over it and making fun of Mark McGrath. But then he later went on their podcast and explained that it was because he was offended at the concept of them using gay as a
Yeah.
derogatory
Yeah.
term. But I'm unconvinced that that's why that's why he was doing that.
Yeah. Like, I'll have to watch that after the pod.
But there was another video I was going to send you because are you aware of Spider-Man Turn Off the Dark?
No?
Right, so obviously with the huge success of the Raimi one and two Spider-Man films,
Mhm.
they decided to make it musical. So it was directed by, it was like a proper Broadway musical. This is going to turn into a episode about this, but it was like, do you have to go soon? Like you have to
No,
go at
no.
like 4, don't you?
Keep going.
But so there's this musical, and it was directed by the director of the Lion King Broadway production.
Okay.
So it was I forget her name. Something Trainer. Like oh no, it was Julie Taymor, I think. It was I think it was Julie Taymor.
Sure.
So she directed it. And it was this horrible nightmare production. Like there was constant injuries. There were constant problems. The original villain was like one of her own creation from like Greek mythology called Arachne, and then like Green Goblin was like a secondary villain. Like it's
Mhm.
completely bizarre. It was a huge nightmare. Like a normal budget is between 5 and 15 million. This cost $75 million like to
Oh,
put on
great.
this musical.
Yeah.
Oh, it's a musical, by the way. It's not just a play. It's a musical. So it's
Spider-Man.
horrible.
Spider-Man.
Yeah, no, it's a disaster. But the one shining highlight of it was the performance of Patrick Page playing Green Goblin. Like he is the only good thing about the musical apparently. Uh, so like they recognized his talent eventually, and like after constant rewrites, they finally gave him like this one like big performance, which he actually performed on David Letterman, which is the video I'm gonna send you. And it's called "A Freak Like Me Needs Company," where he does this like elaborate dance. He's in his horrific Green Goblin costume, but it's just so high energy and it's so terrible. It's so hilarious. Like it's bizarre because I've heard that like a lot of the songs are like really forlorn and
Yeah.
depressing and like
Mhm.
Oscar bait, like they're looking for, Tony nominations for their quality of songs. But then like he's just having like a ball of a time and it feels like,
Awesome.
the 1960s Batman. Like it's technically terrible, but I love it and I
Yeah.
will absolutely send it
Sounds
to you
great.
because it's hilarious on every level.
Can you imagine Willem Dafoe doing that?
I think it would be amazing because initially Alan Cumming was meant to do it, but then
Oh.
he sort of like he sort of like saw that it was going south, and he says that he like dodged a massive bullet. But like Patrick Page was sort of like waiting around, waiting to be like nominated for a Tony because like apparently there was a lot of buzz around him being nominated for a Tony, but it never came, so he eventually left the production, and then
Mhm.
it pretty much just shot itself, and they stopped showing it in 2014. But
Mhm.
like it is my dream now that they finally put Hamilton on Disney Plus,
Yeah.
they need to reunite the cast of Spider-Man: Turn Off the Dark and give us one final performance.
Absolutely. Get a wee mini review out of that.
Oh yeah, 100%. A full podcast.
Full podcast.
I'm just seeing how much more I have. I don't have a huge amount of
No
Citizen Kane.
worries, man.
So yeah, so back to Citizen Kane. You said you had some comments on Rosebud. So if you want to go ahead with that.
Yeah, like I just thought it was a really sweet meaning of it. I wanted to ask you, like, what did you think the meaning of it was going to be? Like, for me, I thought it was going to be like the password to like his secret fortune or something else. What did you think it was going to be?
Unfortunately, I was fully aware,
Uh,
due to me having such an extensive
Absolutely.
movie trivia database in the old brain. I
Absolutely.
was aware that it was going to be his childhood sled, but I didn't really like. I knew that, but I didn't really recognize until seeing the whole film, and I understood the message that we sort of extrapolated from it. I didn't really get why that would be a possession or a thing of significance, especially in his final moments. So yeah,
Mhm.
I sort of did need to, even though I knew, uh, you know, materialistically what Rosebud was, I sort of needed to watch the film to get the message to understand the meaning behind that being his last words.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, that was great. I thought it was very nice. You can't. I suppose it's not really a MacGuffin, is it?
No, because
More of a
I mean,
motif.
it is sort of an item that pushes the characters towards a certain goal, but they don't know that that's what it means. So I guess it's not really the item leading them. And even if it was, that would still be a revolutionary narrative technique because this wasn't
Yeah.
in a time where that was a thing really.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think it's the image of the Rosebud sled like being burned is just so iconic. That's such a great metaphor for like his childhood and like you said, Buddy, perfectly, his innocence just being destroyed.
Yeah, and I was optimistic that it was going to end on maybe a more cheery note because that was sort of the like that was the last scene of the film that I was aware of. I knew that came at like the very end of the film, but I was hoping for like one more scene where things came together and there was I don't know a gleam of hope or optimism. But there isn't, and that isn't an issue. It is a dire ending. That no one knows the significance behind Rosebud, and it's sort of just I mean the film doesn't have a huge message. It's kind of like you're just watching the life of
Yeah.
this character. But I
Mhm.
mean, there isn't a lot of meaning to be taken from it. I guess
Yeah.
it is just a man who lived his life. Some people liked him, some people didn't. It's I guess in that sense he was an everyman because I mean he was famous, he was wealthy, but he wasn't exceptional in any way really.
Good point. That's a really
Uh,
good point, Buddy.
he just he lived and he died like everybody, and
Yeah, man.
and then his secrets are burned along. His secrets are burned and he's buried. So I mean, it is kind of a like a cynical ending, I guess.
It is, dude. It is. Yeah, it's a great point.
I have nothing else to say on the film, just other than, it was regarded as the greatest film of all time, and it still is regarded by many as that. I know a lot of people consider this film to be overrated, and I mean, maybe to the extent that people call it the greatest film of all time, it's overrated, but it's certainly not overrated to call this a great film, because I definitely believe with certainty that at least at that point in history, this would have undoubtedly been the best film ever made.
Absolutely, Callum. Absolutely, and I'd love to hear your rating, man, for this one.
Yeah, so aside from some misplaced music choices, I loved every aspect of this film. We have our fun criticizing things, making fun of things, but without question, this is an incredible film. It has its moments of levity. And there are moments where the music does match up, and the music is consistently amazing. And was obviously revolutionary in establishing so many tropes, narrative techniques, and visual techniques. So I mean, I think for its influence on the film industry and my surprise at actually enjoying it, I have to give it a 10 out of 10.
Awesome, Callum. I thought that was fantastic, dude. And for me, yeah, I think this is probably the best made film of all time, in the sense of how it revolutionized the industry. And obviously, similar to 500 Days of Summer, I love that stuff. So for me, I'd give it I have in my notes a 9 out of 10, but I'll bump it up to a 10. So
Lovely.
yeah, in a similar sense to Michael from Love Island, I would rate it a humble 9, but being a hero kind of bumps it up to that 10. You know what I'm saying?
Indeed. Wow. What wise words from Michael. Who knew that he would influence our review of Citizen Kane?
We should get him on the podcast.
I don't know that I'd want to meet that guy.
Michael Griffith. I think Griffith is his surname. Michael Griffith's interview in the podcast. That'll be fun. But no, that was a great set of 4 films so far, buddy. And we'll have to I'll have to make a confession to the viewers. I have not seen Gone with the Wind yet. So this will be Gone with the Wind will be recorded on a different day, viewers. So
oh, Matthew, your editing will be so seamless that you don't even have to leave this in. It will be so seamless they will never know.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. So yeah.
I mean, we don't need to wrap up the episode because we'll be tacking on the other.
Yeah, I gotta keep this in. This is real. So, future Matthew, take it away with the next film, buddy. So, the next film, I suppose we should talk about, Callum, is Gone with the Wind. Then, yeah.
Yes. So this is the earliest film that we're going to be talking about today, but it's the last one for today's episode. Can you hear all of the ruckus outside my house?
I can't hear anything.
It's so deafeningly loud in my headphones. Like it's just like there's drilling, like jackhammering going on, and also there's just like 6 sirens that are going off. I have no recollection as to what they're doing.
It adds to the viewing experience. It's real.
Oh yeah, a bit of ambiance.
Exactly, that's exactly what it is. That's exactly what it is. But yeah, like you said, 1939, is it? Yeah.
Indeed, and it's sort of shocking to me because I really did not know that color film existed in 1939.
Yeah.
So I went into this film with either the expectation that it was going to be black and white, or that it would have been colorized like in the present. But that that's not the case. Apparently to film in color was an available technology that people just chose not to do.
Yeah, that's really astounding to me, actually, because this film actually does, to give it credit, it does look great. It's so vibrant and colorful, although that might be because the rest of the films we watched for today's episode were in black and white, so it stands out a bit more. So it's hard to compare. Like, I haven't seen a colored. This is the first colored film I've seen in a while, actually. So it's strange.
Yeah.
So it might be.
And the next one that we'll be watching will be The Kissing Booth. Check out our review coming soon.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I'm not looking forward to watching that because I've seen it before and it's rough. I'll be honest.
I like a good rom-com though. I like a good rom-com.
It's a bad rom-com though. It's not heartwarming or funny. It's not romantic. So buzzing for it. Yeah, I can't wait. I'm sure the sequel will be great. Yeah, I have high expectations.
High expectations.
So I knew that this was going to be a romance film set with the backdrop of the American Civil War.
Sure.
What I didn't know going in was, obviously we'll be talking throughout about the insensitivities in the cultural depiction. Can you not hear that outside my house?
Can't hear that either. It's all good.
Are you kidding?
No, I'm
Oh my
serious. Why?
God.
What's
All
going
right.
on up there?
It's so like I don't even know anymore, but it's like the loudest drilling I've ever heard, and it's like right beside my window. Uh, but like we
Poor
need like a
guy.
soundproof podcasting studio.
Not yet. We don't have one yet.
Like we definitely need to get in on that.
Just a wee,
But
a wee
we'll
shed or something. That'd be cool.
oh yeah, we nice shed. I mean, we're not gonna have much luck like with like the 2 meter cement patch that you could generously call my garden. So I mean, yeah, we may need to find a more remote location. But we'll be talking throughout this review about certain insensitivities, downright racism. Let's be honest,
Yeah,
in
absolutely.
this film, and also depictions of marital abuse. So this will be a very full on review.
Yeah.
So if you haven't seen the film, and I will be fully slating this film. I think it's horrible, if I'm honest. So I mean,
Yeah, fair.
if you guys
Fair.
haven't seen it, definitely watch it so that you know that we're talking, what we're talking about. Uh, but it was baffling to me because I knew that going in that people had, obviously criticisms for it in regards to its depiction of slavery. I
Sure.
know sort of the
Sure.
the glamorization of it. So I thought that this film was going to be a romantic film that had like some racist remarks within it that were bad enough that people condemned it, or that it had like overwhelmingly bad stereotypes of
Yeah. Yeah. Sure.
black characters or the slaves presented in the film. But then it took me by complete surprise that the protagonists of the film are both like, one is a slave owner, and like they're both supportive of the Confederate cause that was to keep slavery from being abolished. So the whole film wants you to root for these two characters, both of which are inherently immoral because they both support slavery. And that's the entire backdrop of the film. So every decision made by each character in the film, you're like, well, even if I could like this person because I know you know that their entire existence is based on the fact that they own slaves and that they're fighting in a war to keep their slaves. It fundamentally changes how you see every single character in the film.
Such a great point, Callum. I think you've hit the nail on the head there completely, brother. And I have to agree, and it's sort of I never really identified or liked the characters from the beginning, to be honest. I think they're really, really poor protagonists. Don't get me wrong, I think the performances are incredible. Vivian Lee gives just as good a performance here as she does in Streetcar, in my opinion. And but the thing is, I think this film did you want to hop right in with the chat about like it's outdated just and blatantly racist themes, or did you want to leave it until later on until we get to like plot specific points?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose we should just cover it, as it comes up within the plot.
Yeah, no worries. But yeah,
But
like as I said, the two protagonists, they're it's very generous to call them protagonists, really, at that.
yeah, I would say that there are certain times where you're meant to maybe question Scarlett's decision making, but we're never meant to question her morality, I don't think. And the film never offers a critique of the fact that she's a slave owner, and that
Yeah,
Rhett Butler and every other character. I mean, Rhett Butler less so, but every other male character in the film is excited to enlist in this war so that they can keep their slaves.
yeah,
So yeah, it was just
it's sickening.
horrific to watch, honestly. Yeah. And sort of, I did a bit of research into the criticisms that people had, and I really didn't think that they were harsh enough. But even the criticisms that were launched at the film, people said, oh, like it's political correctness, gone too far, and I don't think it goes far enough. I think that I think the film should be available without censorship so that you can watch it and reflect on it and be like, wow, what a horrible film. So I don't think that it should be censored, because then then you're removing a piece of history that that's there to be criticized, so that we don't make the same mistakes again. So I think it was a mistake to take it off HBO Max, because then that's censorship. So I thought that was not the right choice, but certainly the criticism, I think, is, I mean, I think they should have been harsher, honestly.
It's a great point, Callum. It's a great point. And, we've reviewed To Kill a Mockingbird. I think that film condemns racism in the right way. It goes about it the right way. It has a protagonist who utterly condemns racism and stands up for the innocent black man of the town, who is perceived to be guilty. And, it's this film, I just don't think it does enough to condemn racism or sexism or anything like that at all. It sort of seems like, and I suppose like I'll get into it later, but I think the characters are just complicit with it. Rhett and Scarlett, they're both very ignorant to the black people in the town, and all the characters are, and it's ridiculous. And I don't think it's okay to say oh, this movie is a masterpiece. It's great. It's okay. It just presents views at the time, but like it's this this movie is what, 1939. The director
Yeah.
obviously wanted to tell a story during the American Civil War, so it obviously was a conscious decision to have racism as a theme. But I think if you've got to do that, you've got to do it right. You've got to present it as you're condemning it, like To Kill a Mockingbird. This movie just
Yeah.
doesn't do that, in my opinion. It just completely misses the mark.
Yeah, I mean, this film is based on a book, but I mean, surely in reading the book and realizing this is pro-slavery, why would you ever make a film about it? And
Yeah,
it baffles
exactly.
me that to this day people regard this as one of the greatest films of all time. Like, it ranks within, like the top 10 of like the American Film Institute's, top 100 films of all time. And it's baffling, honestly.
I mean,
I mean,
like, yeah,
it's like, it's a very bad sign when I just make in my notes like an offhanded reference to the fact that, Ashley is committing incest by marrying his cousin. For that to be like a footnote in these notes,
yeah.
that is not a good sign.
I know,
That is,
man. I know. Yeah,
that's a very shocking indictment on the film. That
yeah, man.
that's
Like,
not the worst lapse in morality in the film.
exactly, buddy. And it's not as if it's just a critical success. This is the highest grossing film of all time, adjusted for inflation. I think this made like upwards of like $3.5 billion or something, if I'm not
Yeah,
mistaken. Which is
yeah, it's
don't get me
crazy.
wrong. This movie is very well made. The filmmaking is excellent. It's very well shot. But the themes it presents and the message it tries to convey, I'm absolutely bewildered that this has a rewatchability factor to it, as well as it's 4 hours long.
Yeah. I mean, I would probably watch it again for its like historical and film significance, but I would never, like, I'm not watching it for enjoyment. I'm watching it for, education, to learn like why anyone thought that this was a good or acceptable idea. I think it's interesting to watch, but it was a horrible watch for me, honestly. I really I hated every moment of it because I was just the message was so poisonous, I thought.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's a great way of putting it.
I mean, there's literally a scene very early on in the film of like black children fanning these like white elitist women. And like if they felt the need to show that for historical accuracy, I would somewhat respect that, because then, they're sort of like, showing history as it was. If they're doing that for historical accuracy, that's one thing, because then that's not them like, that's them making sure that they don't sanitize history, but then they make no effort to criticize it. They don't show this shot and then go like, a character like the protagonist of the film, say there were an anti-racist protagonist of the film who then says, "This is horrific. We need to change this."
Sure.
Like that.
Yeah.
There's not a character like that. This entire film is populated by racist characters, and just
Oh,
it
man.
was tough, honestly.
Like there's literally a shot. One of the opening shots of the film is there's literally like black children operating the bell in Tara Estate. That's absolutely, like, I know. Like, don't get me wrong. I know it's presenting like history and stuff, but like you said perfectly, Callum, they don't make an attempt to really criticize that at all. And it's just there's not a character in the film that I was a huge fan of.
Yeah,
And that's really, I think that's a really big criticism of the film. I think every film should have a character, be it a side character, the main character, a cameo, whatever. You should have a character that you identify with and you can see yourself on the screen. This film has absolutely no one there. And I don't mean to say that as in like I'm so like morally above this film, as in like, oh, they were all racist, so I don't see myself there. That's not what I mean. I mean, like, there's not
That
even
should be what you mean, Matthew. I think that's a fair enough point in itself.
yeah, but also like there's not an anti-racist character to identify with. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you know, like this film wants you to root for this romance.
Yeah,
We'll talk about the film more, the ending of the film more in depth, when we get to it. But just
yeah,
the fact that it's like it ends on like an optimistic note of like, it wants the audience to like root for Scarlett getting Rhett back. But that's problematic not only for the fact that they don't deserve love because they're bad, immoral people, but his marital abuse of her means that he's unworthy of her love or anyone's love.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
you know, but yeah, I don't have many nice things to say about this film.
Fair enough.
But
Fair
one
enough.
character that I sort of gleaned respect for a moment was Charles, who was Scarlett's first husband.
Mm-hmm.
And then I remembered that he was enlisting in the Confederate Army, and then that immediately changed my perspective of
Yeah,
him.
yeah,
But his death is like played off as a joke, and like his life is like his living existence is simply portrayed as like an obstacle to Scarlett being with Ashley. And I thought that wasn't really I was very dismissive of the life of a person, even if that person held morals that I don't agree with.
such a great point, Callum. And there's a line that really annoyed me at the start of the film, and Gerald, I think it's his name's Gerald. Scarlett's father. He says, "What does it matter who you marry? As long as he's a Southerner that looks like you, I don't care." And that is just, I know that's history, but that is just stereotypical. Just, oh, do you know what I mean? That just annoys me. I know it's
Yeah, it's
history, but it's just, it doesn't even make an attempt to criticize that. We've
yeah.
seen
I mean,
like Django Unchained. Tarantino makes it an effort to criticize racism, you know, and that, but here it's just like, yeah, those are the values at the time. Let's just move on. It's just lazy.
yeah, like you can't make a film set in the American Civil War without racism being a theme. But
Sure,
why would you ever think to set it on the side of the Confederates who were pro-slavery and have those characters be the protagonists? It's
sure.
just it makes no sense to me, and I have no idea why anyone considers this a watchable film.
Yeah. Yeah, I understand that like films are subjective. So like I said, I think it's very well made. It's so well shot, cinematography, lighting, all that good stuff. Performance is amazing. It's just the themes and the message just completely tear that down for me.
Yeah, I mean, Vivian Leigh is one of the best actresses of that time, and she's incredible in this film, and her accent is amazing. But like her acting is incredible. It's just the fact that she's acting as the protagonist and saying these horrifically racist lines that are in support of slavery. So I mean, she must have, you know, I mean, some blame must lie on her accepting this role.
That's what I mean. Like, what would make people, like, what would make you want to accept a role like this? Like, what would make, Clark Gable accept the role as Red? What would make Vivian Leigh accept the role as Scarlet? I think I think is it the woman who plays, is it Mammy is her name?
Yes,
Yeah, I think she won
she
Best
was
Supporting Actor, didn't she?
yeah, she was the first actress, I believe, to ever win an Academy Award.
Yeah,
Uh,
she is great. To be fair, in this, she is good.
yeah, she is great in the film, but it's just that she is also perpetuating the perspective of like the glamorization of slavery, where
Yeah,
uh,
yeah,
she seems to be loving her life, but I mean, presumably she was bought and has never been treated like a human, and it was perplexing, honestly.
was
Perplexing, I
perplexing.
think, is the best word for most of this film.
Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely.
and yeah, I just really don't understand how this film wasn't cancelled earlier. To be honest, you know,
Hmm.
I like obviously we see actors like Leonardo DiCaprio in Django Unchained playing like a horrible racist. So obviously he accepted that role because he knew the film was being critical of such a position and a mindset. But I have no idea why an actor would accept like the leading role in a film as a protagonist who is pro-slavery.
Pro-slavery. It's a great point.
It's
It's there's many a scenes in this film where Scarlett O'Hara slaps the black people of Tara, and that in itself, I don't know how that made it into the final edit, to be honest with you. I really don't.
I know there's one scene where she slaps a black child, and then minutes later she also slaps a horse so hard it dies, and and she is the romantic lead of this film. That she is regarded as one of the most famous and respected female heroines because of how,
Sure.
I mean,
Yeah.
granted, she takes full responsibility for her life, and uh, she learns to not have to rely on anyone else. So she's a fully independent person. It's just that she's independent in owning slaves. So or like running a mill, populated, like where the work is done by prisoners that she doesn't pay.
Mm,
So it's independence, but used for horrific means.
yeah.
So I don't really see where people find respect for that character.
I know, man. And there's a scene that it's probably one of the scenes that angers me the most, and it's a scene. I don't know if you recall it, but it's when the young girl is outside the house that all the white people, including Rhett, are at the top floor, and she's desperate for help. There's bombs going around off all around her from the war, and then Rhett and the white people just laugh at her, and just it genuinely frustrated me. I don't know if you remember that one.
I don't recall that scene. It must have been when I was taking notes for another part of the film.
Sure.
But that's horrific. You know, I I just don't understand this film. I knew that recording this review would be tedious because it would just me being like in pain throughout it because just
Sometimes it has to be
my
said, though.
points are going to be quite repetitive because it's just like, oh, this scene was horrific, this scene was horrific, this scene was horrific. It's
Yeah.
going to get repetitive to a degree. But I just want to
Well,
obviously
yeah, like
reinforce that I'm in complete opposition to
yeah,
everything in this film pretty much.
as well as the like, don't get me like, there's things that I really like appreciate about this film and how it's influenced the industry filmmaking wise, but as well as the racism, are the Scarlett O'Hara's character, she's a murderer, she's an adulterer, she's a racist, and she just endorses sexism. It's quite like it's just ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad that this film can be used as a lesson in what not to do.
Yeah,
So I
it's a great
respect it
point.
for that.
It's a great point.
It does act as a great lesson. So I hope that everybody watches this film and realizes that that's the very much the wrong thing to do when you're making a film.
Yeah. But yeah, like, there's a lot of things that are definitely a product of its time in this film. There's definitely, there's a weird intermission there and stuff, and there's a lot of exposition, sort of Star Wars style, so opening exposition, which I suppose it is a product of its time and stuff. But for me, the film generally, like, to say something, it feels like I think there's a lot that could be cut out here. We haven't really mentioned the extended 4 hour runtime of this, but it feels like one of those TV movies or like a TV show special or something like that. It's definitely way too long.
To be fair, I would often criticize, the long runtime of a film, but I find this film so interesting. I sort of,
Sure.
I
Yeah.
wanted to see like how they were gonna like top themselves with the audacity of the message they were portraying.
Yeah.
With
Sure.
every scene, I was like, how are they gonna make this worse? And then they did. How are they gonna make this worse? And then
Oh
they
my god.
did.
Yeah.
So I was sort of, watching the film with a sense of intrigue because I
Sure.
was, so it did hold my attention, and yeah, I mean, I feel like if you're gonna cut out everything that I hated about this film, there wouldn't be any film left. But sort of as you mentioned, like the opening piece of music and then the intermission and then the end piece of music. I did feel happy about that because then I could just skip like 4 minutes ahead. So
Yeah.
I felt
Yeah.
like I
It's a
was
great
making
point.
making progress.
It's a great point. It's a great point. And um, like there's a lot of like there's points that like some of my points are not like super super detailed. One thing I thought the film did do quite well was how it sort of conveys the brutality of war in a sense. The way how people find out who was killed in action is brutal. It's just a person, not sorry, just a leaflet that's handed out to everyone with everyone's name who's been killed in action. There's no like personalized address at anyone's house. There's no one who comes knocking on the door and says, "Oh, your husband's been killed, your brother's been killed, whoever." And also, what else I'd say there about like the movie does present the horrors of war very well. It's nearly as good as like Hacksaw Ridge in a sense. Hacksaw Ridge is one of the favorite war film I've certainly seen, and it does it so well. But this film, to be fair, does it very well. We see like Scarlett sort of a nurse in the local infirmary, and she's sort of helping all the wounded. But when you think about it, all those wounded are fighting for a misplaced cause. To be
Yeah,
honest.
exactly. It's like if Hacksaw, it's like if a World War II film was from the perspective of the Nazis,
Yeah.
but it was like it wasn't conscripted, like it wasn't conscripted German soldiers. It was members of the Nazi Party who have enlisted to fight this war because they believe in the cause.
Yeah.
And those are your protagonists.
Yeah, I know. Like it's when you use that example, like if you've seen a war film from the perspective of the Nazis, and I'm sure those exist, but I don't think any of them exist that are one, the best film of all time in many people's eyes, but also two, the best financially grossing film of all time. So it's such a strange decision, man. It's probably how I would describe it. Like you said perfectly, buddy. It is a perplexing film in many ways.
Yeah. We haven't talked a lot about the actual narrative of the film,
Yeah, sure.
because we've sort of just talked about like the thematic elements and the message of the film.
Yeah.
But sort of a recurring motif throughout the film is Scarlett's multiple marriages to different men. So we talked about her initial marriage to Charles, and then she marries Mr. Kennedy, who was initially engaged to her sister Sue Ellen. But she's not in love with Mr. Kennedy. She marries him for his money. But why doesn't she just let Sue Ellen marry him for his money and for love, and then have her fund Tara? Like it
Yeah.
makes no sense to me.
Yeah, exactly, man. Like the family's still gonna inherit the wealth no matter what sister marries him, I suppose. But
Yeah,
yeah, to be honest, there was not one, like, especially the whole like Ashley character. He got old very quickly. I really dislike the character because he sort of feels like he's having his cake and eating it. He wants to be with Melanie. He's like, oh, I can't say I love you. Okay, I love you. Give us a kiss. It's just having your cake and eating it. And he's another character who I think the filmmakers want us to like, but I think they got it horribly wrong.
yeah, and I would say that it's sort of that idea of she wants to marry this man, and then she like settles for Rhett Butler, but he eventually like wins her love, I guess. So that she eventually ends up loving Rhett in a different way that she loved Ashley. But this whole time she was like holding a torch for Ashley, and she was like, oh, I couldn't possibly love someone else because I love Ashley so much. Like, what's the real difference between Rhett and Ashley? I mean, they're both like dudes with shit personalities who are not in love with Scarlett, or at least who won't admit that they're in love with Scarlett. They just want to like, mess her around or abuse her. So,
Yeah.
I mean, what is the difference between these two men? Like, I'm not saying she should be with either of them, but, there's not a fundamental difference between the two of them. They both seem like terrible dudes.
It's a great point. And sexism is a theme we haven't really discussed in this film, but it's very it's outdated, but also it's very explicit in this film. We see it's portrayed through the bidding of women at the start of the film, where like Scarlett I think she like takes off her wedding ring and donates it, and then Rhett ends up like buying her in a bidding. And I don't know if I've misjudged that is what happened, isn't it? I don't know if I've
Yeah, I
misinterpreted
mean
that.
that sort of was that is a thing that still happens now. It's usually now in modern society it's sort of flipped on its head, where it's women bidding for men for
Groundhog Day
a
style.
date. Yeah, that does seem to happen fairly regularly. But yeah, but back in the day that would seem popular. But yeah, sort of, yeah, the idea of buying a woman. But I mean, I suppose that's not uncommon to them because they buy slaves. So I mean,
Yeah.
they probably don't see it as a moral issue. But obviously we see a big issue with the commodity. Fuck my life. What is that word?
Commodity.
Yeah, but like how do you say it as like a verb, like
Commoditized? No,
commoditization?
that's a no.
I can't say it, like commoditization.
Go with it. Yeah, let's
Is
go with
that a
it.
word?
Yeah,
Is that a
well,
word?
we've
Yeah,
created
just
it. Go
the
for it.
commoditization of humanity, just isn't a thing that you know that we can morally accept. So I guess that just wasn't unnatural to them.
Yeah, I know. And actually, I take it back. There is one character I sympathized with, the horse.
Well, oh yeah, the horse and all of the slave
All of the
characters.
slaves, yeah. But like in terms of, yeah, like it's yeah, like we sort of hinted. Well, as we've said, the film doesn't have a character that, or doesn't have a lead character, should I say, that we. Well, it wants us to like them, but it misses the mark there, and you know, just I'll get into my main point about it later. But it's just, yeah, that wasn't a great, like you said, man. It was. It's very. This wasn't a great watch. It was a strange one. Like, I don't think we ever really reviewed a movie like this before.
I've never had such a bitter hatred for a film.
Mhm.
I've like said, oh, this film is well made. Like I'm never offended by a film. I don't think
Yeah,
I don't think I've ever witnessed like a fundamentally flawed film like this.
yeah, yeah. I know. Yeah. Me, I'm the same, man. I'm the same.
It's like in many regards, this is the worst film I've ever seen.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. No, yeah, I'd, yeah, I'd probably agree. Yeah, actually, yeah.
Yeah, so we've discussed the fact that she's sort of kissing Ashley on the sly whilst he's married to the character of Melanie, and we're sort of privy to the fact that she's been kissing him here and there, but it's a hug between the two of them that seems to break Melanie's heart, and I guess where she comes from, you can only hug your cousin slash spouse.
Yeah, yeah, no, like the one line in the film, it opens. Gerald says to Scarlett, the Wilkes, they always marry their cousins. I was like, that's
It's
weird.
it's it's just disgusting.
Yeah, yeah, like, yeah, it just this, yeah,
And just the fact that I mentioned, that's not even something that we've gone into full depth in. Like, the moral bankruptcy of this film doesn't stop at incest. It goes beyond that, and I don't know how that's possible, but it manages it.
does somehow.
But I believe that Rhett loved Scarlett, but like no one can say that they love someone and abuse them like he does. And we're going to get into a very serious topic because but before I had watched the film, I'd gone to the Wikipedia, and it's sort of in the analysis section on Wikipedia,
Yeah, like
it went
marital
into
rape,
depth
is it?
on the racism in the film and the marital rape. So
Yeah,
the marital rape is obviously a huge issue that's presented in the film.
yeah,
Uh, but again, it's not something that this film is critical of. It's
yeah.
something that leads to sexual satisfaction for Scarlett. And I read something on the Wikipedia that sort of summarized it much better than I could. So I'll just read that out.
Go
That
for
the
it, man.
film is accused of combining romance and rape by making them indistinguishable from each other. Uh, and by reinforcing a notion about forced sex, the women secretly enjoy it by having Scarlett appear sexually satisfied after having sex with Rhett, and that it is acceptable way for a man to treat his wife. It does just completely excuse the fact that he has had forced sex with her by the fact that we're visually alluded to the fact that she enjoyed it. It's just a horrible connection to make between, as they said, romance and rape, and it's just horrible.
It's a great point, Callum. It's unsettling, it's perplexing, it's disturbing. Quite frankly, it's not. I think if I know this is based on other source material, but I think, and obviously, don't get me wrong, I'm not obviously a film director, I have no experience in that field. It's very difficult to make a film. But, I think if you're a film director, you've got to be very careful if you're going to include themes about racism and marital rape. You've got to be very, very careful with that, as that you don't condone it, and I'm not saying the director intended to do this, but I'm not saying he didn't do that either. It's just one of those things where it's just not clear, quite frankly, man, whether he condones it or not. It's quite frankly, it seems like in the film, like the Wikipedia article said, on how you said perfectly, buddy. It seems like it's sort of almost endorsing that, you know, it's okay, it is blending that romance and the rape, but it's not a theme that I think, it's definitely not a theme that works well together, and it's certainly not a theme that I think is, it needs to be condemned, and the film just doesn't do that.
Yeah, I mean, the film is, you know, in a roundabout way saying that, you know, provided that they enjoy the sex that you force upon them, that's morally justified. And it's just, it's a horrifying thing to watch and to contemplate that the film wants you to think about. And
Yeah.
just the fact that, you know, it has some of the worst themes that you could possibly portray, and, you know, the characters, you know, act in some of the most immoral ways that you could possibly act as a human, and the film doesn't criticize it like for 1 second. And yeah, you know, I can't really say anything worse about that, about this film, because you know, I feel like I've said anything, you know, I feel like I've said my piece on the the moral issues within the film.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Does this film lessen your opinion of Clark Gable and Vivian Lee and the director? Like, and let's say, you know, like for example, if let's say for example, buddy, if you'd watched this film before Streetcar, do you think you would have, your opinion of Vivian Lee would have been lessened?
I do think so, honestly, because I mean, if you can accept a role of a slave owner who is meant to be, like, you know, in the film presented as like a feminist icon who, you know, gets things done, and, you know, she gets her plantation back up and running, and, you know, gets the slaves back into shape, you know, and gets them back to work, you know, that's the message that it's presenting, and that's presenting it as like a positive, like, you know, sisters are doing it for themselves story, you know, like, you know, because she's, you know, an independent character, that makes her admirable, but, you know, what she's using her independence for is morally horrific, and the film doesn't criticize that. So for her to, you know, read this script and think, oh yeah, you know, like I could nail that performance, and she does nail the performance, it's just that, you know, the character is horrific. uh you know, so it sort of does lessen my opinion that anyone could be in sort of what I would consider, you know, pro-slavery propaganda.
Yeah, I respect that, Callum. I respect your honesty, and I think you're, you know, we've mentioned this before. Like, you're so good at constructing these arguments and stuff, and I have to agree with you, buddy. You know, you've made some fantastic points today, especially about this film. You know, and it's weird because this is sort of like this is that, you know, this is probably the most in depth we've gone into the themes about a film, and you know, this stuff has to be said, I think, and you know, obviously, like, you know, they are difficult to talk about, like we said like we said, you know, it's hard to word these things, but you know, it has to be said. I think you've constructed the points great, buddy, so you know, I'd have to agree with you on that one.
Well, thank you, Matthew.
No worries, man.
And, you know, you've sort of said, you know, it is an incredibly well constructed film. It is probably the best made film that I've ever seen that I totally despised.
Sure.
Uh, you know, I think it's well made, well edited, with great music, but I
Yeah.
don't see how anyone could possibly glean any positives from the narrative.
Yeah, you know, I think that sort of, that little sentence there, buddy, I agree 100%. You know, the visuals in this film alone are so striking. You know, the whole town being on fire with red and scarlet shadow in the foreground, that's spectacular. But like you said, the themes, the narrative, horrendous. You know, it's, and you know what, one of the points I have here, you know, sort of at the 2/3 mark of the film, maybe a bit later on, you know, Scarlett acknowledges that, you know, picking cotton is hard work, and that it's beneath her. You know, Rhett even says, "Or these aren't hands of a lady." After, you know, she's been, you know, had like the arduous labor that is like picking cotton, and that sort of makes me think, well, yeah, Scarlett. That's just obvious. That's just an example of Scarlett being complicit in making the black people do it instead. So it's just, you know, I think that's definitely outright proof of Scarlett just being complicit with, you know, racism, in the sense that, yeah, she doesn't want to pick cotton. You know, she understands that it's hard labor, and she doesn't want to do it. You know, it's beneath her standards. But yeah, I'll just let the black people do it, as if that makes it okay.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you know, I don't think that any more can be said about how, you know, horrifically racist the message of this film is.
Yeah.
Did you have anything further to say on the film other than just summarization?
Um. Nothing. Well, I've just little things like the green screen effect just hasn't aged well at all. Green screen never
No,
does.
there was. Are you talking about like there was one shot of like lightning coming down that just looks genuinely horrendous.
Yeah, I was also mentioned like the Rhett and Scarlet when they're in like the cart, and it just hasn't aged well at all. Yeah, nothing more to be said from me.
Yeah. So I mean, uh, we've talked about the fact that for the American Film Institute, this is regarded as one of the 100 greatest films of all time. But what is actually rated number one is in the 100 greatest quotes of all time, which is Clark Gable saying, "Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn." As he walks out of her life forever,
Mhm.
or at least that's his intention. Well,
Yeah,
but then that's obviously him saying, he's sort of in that moment saying that you don't deserve me, I'm gonna leave. But I mean, you're the abuser in this situation.
mm.
So I don't know if how he's saying that, like, he like she isn't worthy of him. I never got that. It seemed that he was never really worthy of her. Uh, or I mean, neither of them are worthy of love in my opinion, because I think they're both morally detestable characters. But just the fact that the film wants you to like root for their potential romantic future. I felt nothing.
Yeah, no, same here actually. Yeah, it's a it's one of those lines. We've talked about this in Casablanca and stuff. It's definitely a line that they wanted to make iconic. I think it's one of those where it's like they were banking this one becoming like a catchphrase. And to be fair, it probably did. I actually have never heard of it before this film, but yeah, I looked into some stuff and they said it was, yeah, like I'd actually watched that scene again on YouTube actually, and I was looking in the comments of that, and a lot of people were like saying that best, such an iconic line. I get it, like it's a very quotable line, I suppose, from the film. But it did feel like they were trying a bit hard.
Yeah, I feel like whenever I'm like quoting a film, I would only really quote the heroes, I guess, because I mean you're never going to
Yeah,
be in a situation where you want to emulate the villain. You're not going to be, like say if you're quoting Star Wars, you're going to say, like May the Force be with you or something. You're not going to say like a Darth Vader quote, because I mean
yeah,
you don't want to be in a situation where you could say something that a villain would say. But then,
yeah,
I mean, Rhett Butler is basically one of the villains of the film, in my opinion. Well, I mean, say they're all villains. He's pretty much one of the biggest villains of the film.
yeah.
So he's not a character that I would want to quote.
Yeah, yeah, no, I get you, man. I'm the same. It's a very, yeah, it's a difficult film to talk about. Like I don't like being myself. Like I've said a lot of negative things about the film. I don't like to be this negative about a film, but here, like I think the stuff has to be said. Like we've said, there is still good stuff here in terms of filmmaking wise and directing. But yeah, it's one of those films, isn't it, man?
Yeah. So did you want to get into ratings of the films?
Yes,
Film.
in a
It's
similar
one
sense,
film.
in a similar sense to you, I actually didn't give it a rating in my review because I was sort of like, I don't know if I can rate it. I might have to rate it in the set. I can't. I'm definitely not rating in terms of enjoyment, but I suppose in
Yeah,
terms of like,
we definitely can't rate enjoyment, and we also can't rate it in the normal sense of quality, because we normally rate the quality in the sense of writing, acting, uh you know direction, editing, like music, all of that stuff. I don't think that we can judge it by the same criteria, because obviously
yeah,
the writing is it's written to have a racist message, so we obviously can't praise that.
yeah. I suppose the only way I can rate it is filmmaking wise. I suppose in terms of like lighting and visuals and cinematography, all that. So I suppose yeah, great score, great cinematography, great visuals, great lighting. Um, I'd probably give it, yeah, I'd give it a 9 for filmmaking. It's just the effect of the green screen that doesn't hold up for me. So probably just, yeah, a 9, buddy, on that one. What about yourself, man? How would you rate it? Just how are you going to rate it, I should say? Like, what are you going to rate
Yeah,
it?
I'm just gonna rate it on technical competency of filmmaking. And the fact that all of the performances I think are incredible. They deliver their lines very well. It's just that their lines are some of the worst things I've ever heard, and the message of the film is horrific. So I would rate it very highly on technical filmmaking competency. So I would say a 9.5. And
Yeah.
I don't know why this has left such a iconic imprint on the film industry. I recognize that in the quality of filmmaking, it's it must have made a lot of uh, a lot of revolutionary techniques, because it is a good looking film for 1939, but just the fact that it's regarded as one of the greatest films of all time, taking into consideration the narrative and the themes, I'm baffled.
Yeah, man. Well, just before we wrap up the episode, I just wanted to say I thought your points were so good, and yeah, like I said, it's sort of that midway through the pod. We haven't really discussed a film in this detail before, but I thought you said it so well, and I don't even be worried about how whether you said something incorrectly or something or worded it wrong. I thought you absolutely smashed it, buddy. To be honest with you, and I think that's some of the best points you've ever made for the review. So credit to you, man. You did great. So but yeah, it's just a very difficult film to review. We like to have a laugh in the podcast, but I don't think it was definitely appropriate for us to have one during this review. So that's probably why this is probably less of a comedic, take the piss review, because we can't really take the piss out of it. We could it's just wouldn't be appropriate.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there were many laughs had throughout this entire podcast, because obviously To Kill a Mockingbird has immense racism. Well, at least it portrays racism. It is critical of racism, so it portrays racism the right way, but it's still a serious topic that we have to discuss in the film. Then obviously, A Streetcar Named Desire has themes of rape in it, and this film had marital rape and racism. So it was not a light-hearted podcast this week.
Yeah. Well, hopefully we'll be back to the happy, laughing ones with
The
whatever we have.
kissing booth.
Kissing booth, yeah. But no, honestly, man, I thought you absolutely smashed it today, mate. To be honest with you, and proud to share a podcast with you, because it's films like these where I'm serious, man, because it's films like these where you talk about the big themes and stuff that you get into the nitty gritty of things. So it was a good review, but no, thank you very much for introducing me to these five films today, buddy, and yeah.
Do you feel more culturally aware now that you've seen these films? Do you feel like you needed to see Gone with the Wind, or are you happy? Do you feel better or worse after having seen it?
So it's sort of a bittersweet one, to be honest with you, Callum. I'm sort of glad that I've seen it, in the sense that, like you said, more culturally aware, and I think it's definitely that, so, these five films are definitely important in terms of the history of filmmaking. So in that sense, I'm glad I've seen it. But in the sense of the themes that Gone with the Wind presents, maybe not so happy. But no, it's been a good podcast discussion today. It's been a long one for the viewers, so if you're still listening to this point, massive thank you, to be honest.
Yeah.
But no, it's been a good one, man. It's good, a good one. And yeah, do you want me to wrap up the episode then, brother?
Yeah, sure. Did you want to do a brief future episode chat?
Sorry, yes, I keep forgetting to do that these days. Yeah, so what movies are we going to be talking about, Callum, in the next few days or week or whatever?
Well, in the next couple of days, we'll be releasing a mini review of The Kissing Booth in intense anticipation for next week's release of The Kissing Booth 2 on Netflix. Matthew has yet to watch The Kissing Booth, so he doesn't know what a drag it is.
We'll be watching
It's
it straight
real
after
bad.
this.
It's real bad, Matthew. I'm gonna put it out there. You will not enjoy it. But following on from that, we'll be continuing our Disney series. So we'll be talking about a couple of classics. I know we'll be talking about the Jungle Book, the Aristocats, 101
Sword
Dalmatians.
in the Stone.
And yes, the Sword in the Stone. Yes, so I'm looking forward to, I would say, two of those films. Are there any that you're looking forward to in that lineup?
I'm looking forward to 101 Dalmatians the most, because I like Dalmatians, and that's my brutally honest answer. And also Jungle Book, because I've heard a lot about it. So
yeah, I would say 101 Dalmatians and the Sword in the Stone for me. Because do you know of the Sword in the Stone?
I don't. Is it like a King Arthur type tale, or what's it going for?
Yeah, it's a young King Arthur tale that I think heavily involves Merlin. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, that should be a good one, man. Then after that, I suppose we could announce our new big franchise series then, yeah.
Yes, our next multi-part story arc on the Movie Mates podcast that will be starting sometime next week will be Planet of the Apes. So we'll be starting off, talking about the original series films with Charlton Heston, and be splitting that up. The first three films of that franchise will be part one, part two will be the remaining two of that franchise and the Tim Burton remake, and then our third episode, which will be the final part of that series, will be us talking about Matt Reeves' involvement in the three films, which are Rise of the Planet of the Apes, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, and War for the Planet of the Apes,
Yeah.
which is one of the series I'm most looking forward to discussing.
Yeah, especially the modern three films, to be honest. And I would say definitely the modern three, and we'll talk about this more in the Planet of the Apes review. I think the modern three films, Rise, Dawn, and War, that's probably considered one of the best trilogies in the last decade, I would argue.
Yeah, because I don't love War for the Planet of the Apes, but I would say it's a solid 6.5, 7 out of 10. So it's still one of the most consistent trilogies because there isn't one like epic feel. And I would say what would you consider the best trilogy of all time? I would probably have to say Back to the Future.
Oh, that's a really good question. Okay, best trilogy of all time, I would say. Oh, are you talking about from me personally, or just or what?
Oh yeah, for you personally.
I would say Captain America, Back to the Future, and then I think the Raimi trilogy is pretty good.
Yeah, yeah. The Raimi trilogy, I do love, but you have to recognize that objectively, Spider-Man 3 is not a good film. We
Yeah,
just love
Indiana
it.
Jones maybe then. Indiana Jones, if we're cutting it from Raiders to Last Crusade, I think that's a really solid three as well.
Yeah, on the Planet Broadcasting Great Mates group last night, so someone on their Facebook group, someone who put up last night that they had just watched Raiders of the Lost Ark for the first time, and they said they hadn't really enjoyed it. So, I sort of commented that I'd seen the original, all four for the first time like a week or two ago, and people were just referring to the Indiana Jones trilogy, and oh, I love those three films. Just completely pretending the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull
it's
doesn't
not
exist.
Bad. It's good.
Which is baffling to me because I think that it's undoubtedly better than Temple of Doom. I think that Temple of Doom is quite a step below Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, and then obviously the other two are far superior to that one.
I'm trying to think what other trilogies are the best. I would argue the modern Star Trek, Chris Pine films. They're pretty good. I like them.
Oh yeah, I definitely agree. Sort of what you said about the Captain America trilogy. I do love. I love the Winter Soldier. I love the first Avenger, but I would say Civil War. It's a bit overstuffed. I don't think it really has rewatchability.
Yeah, the only thing about that trilogy is it kind of gets worse in my opinion, and I know that's a bit of a hot take, but it sort of starts off with my favorite, then another favorite, and then a bit of a good. It's good, but I remember when we went to see the cinema and that together. I remember coming out, and I was like, I think we were both the same. We were just like, yeah, it was good, but it was a bit disappointing.
Yeah, I was really underwhelmed, and then when I watched it a second time, I was mind blown. And now that I've watched it 5 times, I don't think that I could watch it again. Because I go back and I watch the Spider-Man scenes with Tony Stark, and then I watch the airport battle, and then that's it. And then the rest just doesn't really interest me anymore.
Yeah, but I suppose did you want to wrap up the episode then, buddy? Yeah. No worries. Well, listen, thank you very much, Callum, for today. I appreciate it, buddy. Appreciate your time. And thank you very much for all the viewers who have listened to this one. It's been a good chat today. It's been a good chat, and stay tuned for the Movie Mates podcast or the Movie Mates channel in general for our Kissing Booth review. Yeah, damn straight. Disney Part 5, Planet of the Apes, and then the big 50th. So I'm really excited for those as well.
I think the Kissing Booth will be another instance where our friend Cash will just comment what the fuck is this?
Yeah,
yeah. Do you remember when we posted
the dog shit?
Yeah, do you remember when we did Door in the Lost City of Gold? And he just commented, surely not. And I think he's made some hilarious comments on our episodes before, but that's probably my favorite. Just the simplicity of I'm disappointed in you.
I felt honored when he sarcastically put the description of this episode as godly. I was just
oh no, the description that you wrote for the Disney episode is hilarious, but I just like how it 2 times reinforces the fact that we're asking about alien bestiality.
It's an important
But
theme,
also like
you know?
the grammar of the sentence, like if you read it back, it's like we talk about our nostalgia for like for like kids muscle suits and also alien bestiality. So it sounds like we have nostalgia for that.
Does it actually sound like that? Oh shit.
I mean, like give it a read and you see if you gleaned that. But I find that hilarious.
Well, thanks very much for today, buddy. Appreciate it. Thank you to all the viewers. Thanks everyone. Please be sure to like, comment, subscribe, email us at moviematespodcast@gmail.com, all that good stuff. Thank you very much, everyone. Take care and bye-bye.